Hey, y'all, it's meteorologist Erica Lopez. On this April 4th, we are tracking another moderate risk of severe weather in similar areas that we saw last Friday. I know I'm here joined by meteorologist Matthew Capucci, and this looks similar in nature to what happened last week, at least if you were to look at that severe weather outlook. But this is a whole different scenario, especially with the timing of the storms. And Matt, I know we've been tracking this pretty much since last week, and there's a couple different things that I think are worth noting with these storms. Although right now, no tornado warnings, but we do have several severe thunderstorm warnings. Earlier this morning, we did have a couple tornado warnings, and some of those thunderstorm warnings had pretty strong winds. So a lot of different things happening today, and we're going to be tracking it here all afternoon long. But Matt, I know you've been tracking it, and there's a lot of differences here with this outlook.
Yeah, most definitely. If you look at the raw outlook, the Storm Prediction Center's map looks almost identical to how it looked, just 5 days ago when roughly 100 tornadoes spun up over the Mississippi Valley. It really is a case of deja vu. But as you mentioned, the environment is very different, which is the good news. Couple limiting factors today. Number one, a cap, a lid of warm air about a mile above the ground that kind of tamps down surface particles from rising and prevents them from generating thunderstorms much of the day. So that's been good news so far. It's about 5 o'clock, actually 6 o'clock Central Time. And so far, no tornado warnings, which is in stark contrast to last week's outbreak. So, Erica, so far so good in that department. We don't expect that to continue. We expect there to be some tornado warnings later on tonight, but for the time being, things are remaining at least somewhat well behaved. Number two, we're not exactly sure how far east the boundary instigating all this, the cold front, the dry line combination that right now is west of Interstate 35 in Oklahoma is going to get and how quickly it's going to push east. It's been trending farther backwards, so to speak, than we've expected. And so that does a couple things. Number one, that exposes more people to severe weather. Initially, it looked like the instigating boundary would be east of Oklahoma City. It hasn't even reached Oklahoma City yet. So that could give them a sneaky severe risk later on tonight. Same thing with Dallas, same thing with Texarkana, and same thing with really Northeast Texas and much of Arkansas. So that's bad news there. However, that kind of delays the onset. And so that's why the storm's been trending later and later and later, and why we didn't even start the stream until close to 6 p.m. Central Time. So, there's some mixed good news, some mixed bad news. This is definitely a much more uncertain setup than last week's was, especially given those capping concerns. One place where the cap has already broken and is resulting in severe weather is in parts of Iowa. So let's see if we can take that right now. I have that on the Mac Mini. So Damien, we want to make sure that's queued up. We have a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings, one just west of Des Moines, you can see right here. And they all kind of have that kidney bean a hook shape. They're kind of arcing backwards, almost like a C shape. And that's a sign that there is some rotation within these. Obviously, no tornado warnings yet. But this one is a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for Guthrie, Boone, and parts of Adair and Dallas counties. This one's for ping pong ball size hail and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Should stay just west of Des Moines. But the one that is more concerning right now and likely will hit Des Moines is this one right here, a little bit near and north of Mount Ayr. So this one was located near Diagonal, or 9 miles northwest of Mount Ayr, moving northeast at 55 miles per hour. So again, this one is for parts of Madison, Union, Ringgold, Clark, and Adair counties. This one right now is producing hail to about quarter, half dollar size. But notice this hook beginning to manifest on the southwest side, right near Diagonal. So that's why this one could, in the medium range, be a little more concerning. And this one, too, is something we call tail end Charlie. Meaning, look, it's the southernmost in the line. There's nothing to the south, nothing to interrupt its supply of warm, moist inflow, air rushing in from the south to feed this storm. That's why this one up north won't be quite as pernicious, I don't think, won't be quite as bad. But if one was to overachieve a little bit, it would be this one right here heading for Des Moines. However, I don't see much of a tornado threat for Des Moines in the short term. Here's why. Let me see if I can switch on over to the internet. And I know this seems rather straightforward, but keep in mind, I'm not always the most tech-savvy person. So hopefully you should be able to see internet right now. Let's show you some of the surface observations for Des Moines right now. We're going to go to the Storm Prediction Center website and see if we can pull up something called mesoanalysis. This basically shows you kind of what's going on across the whole area. We'll change the sector, and we're going to try to focus on the Midwest. Here we go. So look, right here, obviously, this is Iowa. We see the storms are plotted. Here's some storms right here. Here's some other ones. These are the ones we're watching closely. The low pressure center is kind of elongated from south central Kansas, right along Interstate 35, south of Salina, a little bit northeast to southwestern Iowa, okay? So everything's spinning counterclockwise about this low. One thing I'm noting, though, let's put on these surface observations. We'll do printable surface observations, and I want to point out, and this will look kind of like a bucket of spilled paint, but we're going to try to magnify this. Look right now in Iowa, okay? In southern Iowa, temperature of 84 degrees. In northern Iowa, it is 44 degrees. So there's a very stark front in here somewhere. And the question is whether or not those storms are on the warm side of the boundary or the cool side of the boundary. If they're on the cool side of the boundary, there's a much lesser risk of severe weather in the form of tornadoes. Sure, they'll still produce hail. Of course, you can have elevated thunderstorms, storms rooted in warm air above a shallow cool layer producing hail. But I think the tornado risk is relegated to the warm sector in south central portions of the state. So that's why I think tail end Charlie could produce a tornado, but it's moving into an unfavorable environment. Now, we can look at something else right here and switch it over to something called the CAPE, the convective available potential energy. And we can very obviously see where that boundary is. CAPE is basically saying, hey, how much juice is there to get storms going? This is kind of as far north as the warm sector of that parent low pressure system has gotten. Remember, low spin counterclockwise. We go back and you'll kind of be able to see. Actually, let's go back over here. Yeah. So low spin counterclockwise, this is literally advecting or dragging warm moist air northwards to a point. This point is a warm front. So the warm front is probably not going to get much farther than it already is, near or just south of Interstate 80 right now. It might kind of wobble back and forth a little bit, but north of this, no naders. You're going to have probably hail. You might have some gusty winds. South of this is where the fuel to get these real deal severe thunderstorms is. And that's why right now, this northern storm, look right here. And Eric, I'm sure you can see this too. This northern storm we just talked about near Des Moines is just about to cross into an area where there is no surface-based CAPE. In other words, there's no juice. Sure, it can survive on mid-level CAPE, juice in the warm air above the shallow cool layer, but it's moving into a cool zone. This southern one still has a little bit longer. So I'd watch this southern one a little bit more, and indeed, we switch back to MyRadar, and we can see this southern one is the one I'm watching. And let's actually use the per station radar. So we're going to switch in the layers menu. Whoops, here we go. We'll switch to the per station radar. We're going to put on the Des Moines radar. And again, this looks like a bucket of spilled paint, but we'll switch this over to something you'll be able to understand in just a second. Okay, so here's the reflectivity. My apologies for the background noise. I'm dog sitting actually for the competition. And the dog is having a grand old time with one of his squeaky toys. I actually bought him a waffle squeaky toy and a cloud. So you might hear him periodically. He's offering his analysis as well. But this one near Des Moines, remember, these are all kind of in the cool sector, north of the warm front. But this one is still where the warm front is located. So I have a couple concerns with this one. Number one, in the next little while before it crosses the boundary, it could go tornadic. But number two, if it anchors itself to the warm front, and again, let's show you where the warm front is. Here's Des Moines, okay? We'll go back to the internet, if I can find it. Come on, internet. Oh, no. Well, in any case, I promise I am decently tech savvy. We'll go back and see if here we go. Okay. So switch over to Google Chrome. Remember, this is about to cross the cool side. This one's still on the warm side. So if this thing anchors itself to the warm front, it's going to have more helicity to work with. What is helicity? Well, helicity is low-level twist, and there tends to be a lot of that along warm fronts. It kind of twist and turn storms a little bit extra. So if that thing takes a right turn and anchors itself to the warm front, it will gobble up more of what we call streamwise vorticity. Basically, along the warm front, there's overturning, horizontal overturning like this. And a storm theoretically could tilt that horizontal streamwise vorticity into the vertical and use that to spin even faster and increase tornado odds. So that's why I think this one right here, a little bit north of Mount Air, about 15, 20 miles west of 35, heading in the direction of Des Moines, could eventually become a problem. But for the time being, not so much. One cool feature, if we can just barely look right here, let's zoom in a little bit, you'll see one of the storms. It'll come back in just a moment. Here we go. So actually, two cool features. Number one, this right here is what we call a hail spike, okay? So what's happening is essentially the radar beam from Des Moines is coming out. It's hitting hail in the storm. Ordinarily, the beam would go out, it hit something, it would return back to the radar, and the radar would say, okay, based on how long it took, that's how far it is away. What's happening here, though, where this little spike is, and I'll zoom in for you, the spike near Tingley, is that there's so much hail within the storm that it's reflecting some of the signal from the radar first towards the ground, then back up towards the radar. And that causes it to look like it has a little bit of a longer path length, or in other words, is precipitation farther from the radar. So the radar mistakenly plots precipitation as farther away, giving this little spike. So what this says to me is that this storm, a little bit north of Tingley, heading the direction of, it looks like, Murray and Freyer, a little bit east of Crest Municipal Airport along Highway, well, whatever the highway is between Thayer and Murray. It looks to me like there's going to be some golf balls or perhaps lime-sized hail in there, given the presence of that hail spike. So that's something we have to watch. But another cool feature I want to point out, and again, once it loads, we'll see in just a moment. All good things all good things take time. And obviously, a lot of people are looking at this radar data from this particular site today, which is why maybe just a moment or two before it loads. In the meantime, we'll kind of sit and enjoy this moment together. But here we go. This cell up here near Interstate 80. When I put this in play, you'll notice it was first exhaling air. See this little boundary? Okay. You'll see a boundary pop out. First from this storm and then this storm. This little green line is leading edge of cool air exhaust exiting storms. So watch right here. Here's that boundary. It kicks out, and then look, 1, 2, 3, 4 storms develop. So those storms are actually developing on the outflow boundary of the storm to the north, which is kind of cool to see. But for the time being, yeah, this one is kind of concerning. We got a couple other storms to watch. Let's zip on down this way and visit our friends in, let me zoom out a little bit. We're going to visit our friends farther east in Iowa and Western Illinois. We'll switch on over to a different radar site so we can get a slightly better view. And again, nothing here screams tornado yet. This one right here near Rushville is alone. It is discrete. It is isolated. And usually that's what we look for. That's kind of a telltale thing that says, hey, this storm is kind of all by itself. It might have the opportunity to begin gobbling up all the volatility of the environment unimpeded and without having to compete with neighbors. This one, though, is a severe thunderstorm warning for Fulton, Cass, Schuyler, and Mason counties in central Illinois. That's for a storm producing about 60-mile-an-hour winds and half dollar-size hail moving northeast at 50 miles per hour. This one, a little bit north of Hannibal, north of Quincy, south of Fort Madison, is for ping-pong ball-size hail. So, Erica, so far, it's all hail. We are noticing, though, there's one storm in southwestern Missouri. Looks to me to be near Table Rock Lake in the direction of Branson, south of Springfield. We're going to look and see what's going on with this, because this is in an area where, you know, the environment is kind of primed, but so far the structure of it, the shape, just does not look like a supercell, does not look kind of commensurate with what we expect. In fact, if we zoom in, you can see it doesn't look that great on reflectivity. On velocity, we'll see what's going on. It'll take just a moment to load. Again, green is towards the radar, of course, being north, red is away from the radar. So once this loads, we'll be able to pretty prominently see what the winds are doing, assuming it loads. Here we go. Okay. So there really isn't much rotation in this at all. So to me, this looked to be primarily a gusty straight line winds and hail threat. I'd say nickel to quarter size hail and winds to about 60 miles an hour, if that. But we're watching that closely. This is for, again, Table Rock Lake, Roaring River State Park, Shell Knob, Galena, McCord Bend, Golden Emerald Beach, Eagle Rock, Chano Lakes, Arrow Point, Cape Fair, Wheelerville, Jenkins, Mattery, and Elsie. And before we start, my apologies to everybody in advance if I mispronounce anything. I've been to a lot of these places before, but I'm horrible at pronunciations. Forrest, you cannot eat that.
Capucci, one of the things too with the app is we have, there's a lot of storm chasers out there right now. So we can actually, you see in the bottom of your screen, we're going to be putting on the storm chaser feeds. Jordan Hall earlier had a very interesting looking camera, and he is near just to the northeast of Quincy, Illinois there. So he had a pretty good shot. I didn't see any hail as you were talking about that earlier with his shot, particularly. I think he's a little bit to the north of the storm to see that. And then there's another chaser, Freddie McKinney, and you can see there a lot of raindrops, but not really seeing much hail. He's also a little too north for that storm, but I'm seeing a lot of chatter in the chat here. And again, thank you for watching us this evening. We're going to be tracking this moderate risk of severe weather. You got a great explanation there from our meteorologist Matthew Capucci on what exactly is going on in the environment, because this was a tricky forecast, still is a tricky forecast heading into the next several hours, and especially up here in the Midwest. I think this is where we're going to primarily focus, because this is really the time frame where storms are starting to bubble up. Later on this evening, something I also want to reiterate with you guys, if you live anywhere just south of where the next moderate risk is, this is more so, although there is a severe thunderstorm warning there in Missouri, this could primarily be an overnight risk. So I want you guys, if you have friends, family that live in these areas, from anywhere from Oklahoma to the eastern, southeastern part of Oklahoma, all the way down into parts of North Texas and even East Texas and Arkansas, just make sure that they know that their alerts need to be turned on, especially for the overnight hours. Have a MyRadar app handy for the overnight, because these storms could get really strong heading into the overnight hours. And of course, if you're watching us on the app, you have questions or concerns heading into the next several hours. I know some of these areas were struck by severe weather just last week, just a couple days ago. It seems like yesterday we were covering the severe weather event. So ask your questions in the chat. We're going to be here, of course, Matthew Capucci in Washington, D.C. tracking these storms. We're down here in Orlando, Florida. So continue to ask your questions and we'll get to them. But a lot going on right now. Although there are no tornado warnings, these storms could still pose a danger. Like Capucci was saying, some of these storms are already producing large hail that also can create damage. And we saw that earlier today. So I just want you guys to stay weather aware into the next several hours. I know some of you were asking questions in the chat, so we're answering them in there as well. So Capucci, something else heading into the next several hours too. We're going to try to show you these chaser cams in the next several hours, but if you see there behind me, putting where the outlook is in comparison to where the severe thunderstorm warnings are. They're starting to get into that moderate risk zone already, and so at Eastern time, it's already 6, so you're just heading into the 6 o'clock hour on Central time here. And so these storms, this is a time frame, but after 6 or so, this is when really expect the storms to start firing off. You're already seeing several severe thunderstorm warnings being issued across these regions. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, there's a one lone severe thunderstorm warning down in southern Missouri here. So again, this is going to be a very active evening. For some of you, a long evening. So I just want to make sure that you are powering your phones through the overnight hours. And of course, we'll keep you safe. But something else too, I love to show every time we do these streams, is where to go if you're under a tornado warning. I know you guys been through this last week. It's been a pretty active year. We started coverage severe weather pretty much since the beginning of 2023, and we're already in the 4th month of the year. It's April. This is when we typically see this activity start to ramp up. And so I just want you guys to be aware, if you have a basement in these areas, that is the best place to seek shelter during a tornado warning. Now, keep in mind, we don't have a tornado warning right now. I'm just getting you guys prepared ahead in case you were to be put under a tornado warning. If you have a hallway, stairs, maybe don't have necessarily a basement, but stairs, hallway, bathroom, closet, away from those windows, that exterior windows that lead to the outside. And if you know there's a confirmed tornado on the ground, we did see a lot of that last week, you want to cover yourself either with a helmet, put as many layers between you and the walls there, and cover yourself with blankets or mattress for protection. If you have a helmet, I think that would be best. You want to try to protect your head. I know when you do tornado drills in school, they always recommend to put your hands on your head. So that's really what you want to do if you're under a tornado warning. There's a tornado on the ground, just to keep yourself safe. And of course, the basement would be the best area to seek shelter. But overall right now, thankfully, there are no tornado warnings. There's no tornadoes on the ground, but we are seeing these storms especially start to bubble up as they're getting into zones of Illinois this evening. So I don't know if we can pull up one of these chaser cams, Damien. I just want to check in. So Freddie McKinney, as you see here on the app, and if we can put that full screen, Damien, a lot of rain coming into his area. And let's zoom into where specifically he is. So he is near Carthage, Illinois. He's driving on Interstate 136. Just a lot of rain coming in. He's on the, I would say, northern corner of this severe thunderstorm warning that's in effect for areas of Carthage, where he is currently. And this is for Hancock, McDonough County, and South Central Lee County, southeastern Clark counties in Illinois. Just a lot of rain activity, of course, right now with these storms. Ping pong ball-sized hail and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts are possible with this storm. So this is something that you need to be watching out for. And of course, still continuing to watch all these severe thunderstorm warnings that are firing off pretty quickly near Des Moines right now this evening. But a lot of chaser cams. Yeah. So, we're going to be able to show you what's actually going on in the ground, because there's a lot of storm chasers up here. And of course, if you have the premium version of the app, you can actually access these storm chaser cams from the layers feature. If you just scroll all the way down, there it is, video and storm chaser layer. And I know some of you, I saw in the chat and we answered it, we're asking about future radar. This is actually a feature that you can access. It's a premium feature in the app, and let's show you a little bit, because I saw a lot of questions of this coming in. But you go to the per station radar here, so or actually let's go to the high def radar. And if you scroll all the way down, you can see down here it says future radar. And so you just toggle that on and it'll give you future radar over the next several hours here. So it's very useful if you're looking for that feature. It is already in the app. Now you may have to upload, or I should say update your app if you want to access this, but this is already a feature in the app. Just wanted to make you guys aware of it, because I did see a lot of questions about that coming in. But Damien there is working on our chaser cams. He's working hard back here with us tonight, and we're going to keep watching this severe weather threat. Of course, if there's any tornado warnings, you can also see it down there on your screen where the warnings layer, I guess, on the screen, the warnings are toggled on. So if we're not talking about your county or not even talking about your city, but you're wondering if you're under a severe thunderstorm warning or maybe even a tornado warning, it'll pop up at the bottom of your screen. It'll list the counties and even cities and what time the exact warning expires. And of course, you'll have us. We'll be tracking this. I'm here with Matthew Capucci tracking these storms all evening long. But so far, no tornado warnings, but that could change pretty quickly here in the next couple of minutes.
It certainly it could. Erica, and let me know when we have the Mac Mini pulled up. I don't want to celebrate yet, so I'm glad there are no tornado warnings. But in any case, we do have severe thunderstorm warnings, and some of these are pretty nasty storms. For example, this storm south of Des Moines is now kind of being clipped by a severe thunderstorm warning. So again, we're looking at the per station radar, the really sensitive radar that the National Weather Service has, the WSR 88Ds, and this one is located in Des Moines. This is a brand new severe thunderstorm warning in effect for the yellow box. But what I'm really intrigued by is two things. Number one, we see a lot of purple. There's a lot of stuff in the atmosphere. In this case, a lot of rain, but especially a lot of hail up there and likely some wet hail. But number two, this spiky thing. This is what we call a hail spike. Basically, there is so much hail in the atmosphere that is reflecting the radar beam, not directly back to the radar, but first to the ground, then back up to the radar, which is a longer path length. And as a result, the radar says, wait a second, the signal took longer to get back to me. That must mean there's precipitation farther away. And it plots this erroneous spike farther away. So really, it's an artifact of just how much big hail there is. That's why the National Weather Service has issued a new severe thunderstorm warning saying $half size hail is possible. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some lime-sized hailstones mixing in with that. But I do think that this storm, even though it is severe, it's near Des Moines, likely it won't become tornadic anytime soon. The reason being, it is going to soon become what we call elevated, or basically rooted in mild air higher above the ground. When we take a look at the Storm Prediction Center's mesoanalysis page, showing us sort of where key boundaries are, we can see there's a key boundary right here, right near Interstate 80 in Iowa. Basically, south of this, it's warm, it's moist, 70s and 80s. North of this, 40s, 50s to near 60. And so the storms south of here are rooted in that warm air near the ground and could produce a tornado. Farther north, once they cross the boundary, they start being rooted in milder air aloft over a shallow, cool air. And as a result, they don't really have a tornado risk once they get north of that boundary. And we can see the temperature plot. Look, 50s, 40s up here, 44 degrees near the Iowa-Minnesota border, 84 in the southern zone. So obviously that boundary is sharp. We can see that boundary pretty well on satellite, believe it or not. If we look right over here, this is kind of cool. So if I back up earlier on this afternoon before storms popped, you can see all these kind of wavy clouds. That's basically warm, moist air riding up and over that shallow cold layer, which forms the clouds. So the warm front earlier on was right here, and watch where all the storms popped. They popped south of that boundary. Now, some, once they got going, moved north of the boundary. So for example, these ones are in the warm sector. These ones are not. They're north of the cool boundary. And as a result, these ones up here will just be what we call elevated hailers. They'll produce hail. They might produce some gusty winds, but once they get north of here, you just won't really see any tornado activity, which is good news. Now we can see, when we take a look at a simulated sounding of the atmosphere, what it means to have an elevated storm. If I zoom in a little bit, this, again, might look like a Greek to a lot of folks. We'll talk it through it. Basically, this is showing you a vertical profile of the atmosphere, a simulated vertical profile. Red line right here is temperature. Green line right here is dew point. When the two are next to each other, that means the air is mostly saturated. But the number that matters is this, 49 degrees, the temperature and the dew point at the surface. But notice, once we go up a little bit, it's much warmer. The temperature and the dew point line spike to the right. So what that says to me is that there's actually cold air near the ground. It's warmer aloft. So north of that boundary, the storms are literally rooted in warm air above that shallow cold layer. And in an environment like this, you just don't get tornadoes. So that's why I think in the next little while, sure, southern Iowa might see that chance of tornadoes, especially in northern Missouri. Missouri and Illinois are kind of primed for tornadoes if something does fire. But once they get north of Interstate 80, not too much going on, which is really good news there. Let's revisit the radar and see what's going on. And I pressed the wrong button again, which I am prone to do. I'll kind of minimize that, and we'll get back to where we're supposed to be. That is a beautiful blue flower. Here we go. I assume it's a flower. In any case, so again, we see this new severe thunderstorm warning in effect for places like Indianola, Lacona, Milo, Melcher, Dallas, and New Virginia, which I wasn't even aware there was an old Virginia, and I live in Virginia. But in any case, So here's where that severe thunderstorm warning is. The southern part of the Des Moines metro area, Interstate 35, you guys have to watch out. This will be crossing the highway soon. If you know folks leaving Des Moines heading southbound, maybe they're going, for example, down to Kansas, Missouri, heading down to Oklahoma, you want to make sure they get off the highway. You never want to be driving when there's big hail on the highway. Believe me, my truck looks like I parked in the driving range. Aside from the fact that it's damaging to your vehicle, it can be distracting. Drivers don't necessarily know what to do. It can make for very slick roadways, so you don't want to do it. So if you're driving north, stop, for example, at Decatur City. Give yourself 20 minutes for this storm to pass. Likewise, if you're driving south out of Des Moines, give yourself about 30-ish minutes. Stop in Des Moines. Don't keep progressing farther south. If you know folks who are traveling, make sure they are not putting themselves in kind of a dangerous situation on the roadways, because oftentimes, slick roadways, bad road conditions can be just as dangerous as even a tornado warning if you're kind of in a vulnerable situation. So again, we are really seeing that hail spike become much more prominent. We'll throw on velocity too to show you which way the winds are heading inside the storm. And remember, this might be still in the warm sector or kind of on the fringe of where the warm sector is. We'll give it just a second to reload. And here we go. You're seeing, not too much of a red against green couplet. We see some sort of different shadings right here. Each shading corresponds to a slightly different velocity. And we do see that a little bit, but we're not really seeing much in the way of sort of a dramatic red against green clash, which to me says it's not really likely there's a ton of rotation in this quite yet, which is good news. So far, knock on wood, things have not been producing to the extent they could have, which is good. There are some limiting factors. For example, a cap of warm air about a mile above the ground, which, that's been kind of inhibiting things. So far, we really have the only action in Iowa, other than this one lone storm north of Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is obviously very elevated. It's kind of in that north of the boundary, kind of in the cool zone, if you will. We'll zoom farther south, see if anything is going on. And really, Erica, we're in a good situation so far. There are many limiting factors today, but there are also many concerning factors. So let's kind of talk through these and show you exactly what these limiting factors are. If I switch back on over to the internet, once I get the little bar toggled up, here we go. Beautiful. Okay, so we'll kind of go back to the surface map. We'll zoom out a little bit, and I want to show y'all a couple of things. If we go on to the College of Duke page, next lab, here's what you sort of see going on. So this is one of the models that we like to use. This is the NAM. We'll switch it over to a different one shortly. Okay, watch this. Ready? Actually, I'll throw on something else. We're going to look at the surface moisture, the surface dew point. The instigating boundary for these storms is actually twofold. Number one, this right here, this line right here that stretches up to here is a cold front, okay? So it's cooler over here. It's warm and moist over here. You can see the obvious amount of moisture way down here, all these shadings. That's a lot of juice in the atmosphere. But then look, there's a second boundary right here. This we call the dry line. Desert, bone dry on the western side of this, moist and soupy on the eastern side. This could also be the impetus for some storms later on tonight, especially as these two boundaries clash. So the triggering mechanism is there. Why do we not have storms blowing up quite yet, especially considering just how much CAPE or convective available potential energy or juice there is? I mean, there's a lot of it, which you can see is kind of being swirled north into Iowa. Some of the most unstable air is in northern Missouri, and it will be in northern Missouri for the next little while. So let's take a simulated profile of the atmosphere to see if there are any limiting factors, okay? We did this, again, for central Missouri, where there's so much CAPE, so much juice, and you'll see in just a moment sort of what this story is, what's going on. Again, it takes a second to load because we're loading a lot of data, but it's really good data, believe me. It'll take just a second to load, okay? So here is sort of the situation right now. Red line, temperature, green line, dew point. A lot of instability. What I mean by that is that this, again, is a vertical profile. We know the rate at which a pocket of air from the ground would cool with height. In other words, if you took a pocket of air and you lifted it high into the sky, there's a given rate at which it would cool, depending on whether it was saturated or not saturated, okay? This is what we call the environment. Actually, this is what we call the parcel lapse rate. Sounds like a bunch of technical mumbo jumbo, but you don't have to remember that. Just remember, we know sort of the rate at which it would cool. So that's what this blue line is. This is saying, hey, if we take a pocket of air from the ground and just keep lifting it, what would the temperature be at various levels of the atmosphere? That's this blue line right here. We also know what the temperature of the atmosphere actually is. That's this red line right here. That's kind of the environmental lapse rate. And so what we know is that a pocket of air from the surface will keep rising so long as it's less dense, i.e. warmer than its surroundings. So we know that because this blue line is to the right of the red line, it can keep rising until right about here, roughly 13 kilometers, so 8 miles high in the atmosphere, at close to about 45, almost 50,000 feet. This area in between here kind of represents how much juice there is. The bigger this area, the farther to the right the temperature of the pocket of areas versus how the temperature outside actually is, then the more juice there is for storms. But one limiting factor is kind of this right here, this little jog back to the right of temperature, but a mile up. That's our cap of warm air. It's not super pronounced here, but if we look farther south, let's go down to Arkansas, for example, you'll see very plainly the cap is a lot stronger down there, and it'll be keeping storms at bay perhaps until midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, at which point it's sort of difficult to ascertain whether or not storms will be bullish, whether or not they'll overachieve. And so, yeah, like we're talking about in Arkansas, look how pronounced this cap is. This cap is obviously a big nudge of temperature. It's warm. It's above the ground by about a mile. And so parcels, pockets of air beneath it, try to rise. They just can't. It's like a ceiling to the lower atmosphere until you literally blow that cap. It's like boiling a pan of water on the stove, and you have all the steam trying to build up inside, but it can't go anywhere because you have the lid on top. Once you pull that lid off, the steam just goes up explosively, but it remains to be seen if we can blow that lid off, which at this point, I am sort of dubious over, just because things have taken a long time to get going so far. And so at this point, we're going to sort of see how this evolves. I would like to look at here we go. I would like to look at a couple different models just to sort of show you how divided they are. So here's one of the models we use. This showed accurately the storms over central Iowa, northern Missouri sort of blowing up at the time they actually did. So I do trust this model. And look, it doesn't have much in the way of discrete or supercell development in Missouri or Arkansas ahead of the main line. Then this line gets going along the cold front tonight, but it's a line. It's not a lone isolated thunderstorm capable of really getting going. It's a line. And so because of that, I think the risk is there for damaging straight line winds, maybe a few embedded spin up tornadoes, but I don't really see a huge risk for tornadoes in this model ahead of the main line. Again, the environment ahead of it is just primed, is ready to go to produce big, significant tornadoes. But the environment is also sort of limiting the storms that would be able to tap into that volatile atmosphere. Whereas a different model, the high resolution rapid refresh model, is a little bit more concerning. It shows a similar picture. It shows sort of all the stuff in Iowa, as has already happened, blowing up. But then watch right here, late at night, it shows just 1 or 2 lone supercells. This one actually has getting going in southeastern Oklahoma, kind of near McAllister in the direction of Atoka County. And then look, northeast, it lasts a couple scans. That's all it takes is 1 or 2 supercells to fire ahead of the main line and quickly become problematic, especially given the volatile environment. And then this line right here would likely be something called a QLCS, or quasi-linear convective system, basically a squall line with embedded kinks of rotation, any of which could be highly problematic. So again, we're watching this multifaceted threat. I do think that tomorrow could be a rather significant day in parts of the Ohio Valley. Look at this model. This just came in. You have a lot of potential supercells, renegade storms ahead of the main line in places like Ohio, Indiana, the Hoosier State, up towards Michigan, even down south towards Nashville, west of Tennessee, western Tennessee, in the direction of perhaps Jackson. You can have some additional cells that may be linear, maybe kind of clumpy, but it definitely remains to be seen. So again, just to kind of recap everything, we'll show you one more time a tour of the radar, so to speak. We have this cell just south of Des Moines, has a hail spike on it. The hail spike is not quite as pronounced as it was a few moments ago, and you'll see in just a second, again, it's loading right now. It's not quite as pronounced. It does not look to be spinning very much. So this cell, not terrible. It has $half size hail, but that's sort of manageable. This cell right here, I believe, is still on the warm side of the boundary, but again, does not have a ton in the way of rotation with it. We'll switch on over to velocity just to show folks at home sort of what the deal is with this one. Again, for Clarinda and it looks like Viscala, or Vasilla, a little bit southeast of Staunton, not a ton of spin. You see, here's something kind of interesting. You see some light colors right here. That represents strong winds, but here's the thing. This is likely something called side lobe contamination, meaning a piece of the radar beam that we don't normally use to inspect for storms kind of bounces off the higher parts of the storm where the velocities are higher and unintentionally gets siphoned back towards the radar. and mixed in with the regular signal. And so we not only are seeing velocities higher up than we like, but we're plotting those as lower than they actually are. So these strong winds right here are likely not near the ground. They're likely higher up, but they're being mapped lower to the ground as a radar artifact, something we call side lobe contamination. We'll go a little further south, and we'll show you a couple other storms. This one a little bit north of St. Joseph, Missouri, is a discrete, isolated storm. It's firmly in the warm sector. This is one Erica will have to watch. It's a little bit west of Savannah right now, east of, ironically, White Cloud and Forest City. And so, let's see, 60-mile-an-hour winds and half-dollar size hail is what the Weather Service is a little bit concerned about, and understandably so. Let's probe real quick to see if there's any rotation within there. We'll take a look at velocity once again, and we don't see a very pronounced velocity field, which is a good thing. Again, we don't see much of a velocity signature yet. We don't want to. Let's take a look a little further east near Quincy, Illinois. We'll take a look at the radar from, I will say, Rock Island, Davenport. One of the unfortunate things is that radar coverage isn't great in this part of the world. What we mean is that there just aren't a ton of National Weather Service Doppler radars. That said, we still have great resolution in the MyRadar app. And one thing we do with the high def radars, we actually have a special algorithms that sort of process radar data from all over the place. It interpolates, it kind of fills in the blanks using knowledge it has gleaned about the storm. It's a tried and true practice, and it does a really good job of making sure everybody has access to quality radar data. So another reason why, if you haven't already, you should download the MyRadar app. Of course, hopefully most of you are watching in the MyRadar app, but if you haven't already, or you have a friend who's kind of waffling as to which weather app they want, I might be biased, but I think this one's pretty darn good. Let's take a look at velocity right now, see what's going on inside that storm. This one is rather interesting. This one has some red against blue right here. So red is away from the radar, green is towards, and the radar is to the north. So that to me says there's some counterclockwise circulation right here. Also potentially a second broader counterclockwise circulation here. What I think is going on though is either one of two things. Let me switch back to reflectivity. So I think the velocities over here are a bit of that side lobe contamination. I do think this velocity is real. So I think what's happening, this thing right here, the backside of this, a little bit north of West Point, wants to rotate more than it is right now. But this thing, this kind of secondary appendage, is sort of getting in the way. So we'll see how this evolves. This one in the medium range, I would say be wary of for a potential tornado, just because the red against green is right here, just east of 110. But yeah, if we were watching for a potential couplet down the road that could go tornado warn, it would be this. It doesn't look especially mature to me right now, but it is something we have to watch. A little bit north of West Point, heading north of Bowen, soon we'll cross east of Carthage in the direction of Tennessee and Colchester along Highway 136. Fountain Green and Macon could eventually be down the road too. We'll zoom out real quick and kind of give you a broader perspective as we wait for the velocity to load, the reflectivity to load rather. And yeah, so there's some hail with that as well, probably about quarter size. But ultimately, we are seeing a number of severe thunderstorm warnings, no tornado warnings yet. And real quick, let's go on over to the Grand Rapids, Michigan radar. We can go out on a limb and say this is probably on the cooler side of the boundary, and yet it is a supercell. It is rotating, but it looks to me to be elevated, rooted in mild air above a shallow cool layer. So likely some hail in there, and elevated storms, believe me, are prolific hailers. We had reports of softball-sized hail right around 10 o'clock this morning north of the warm front. So imagine it being in like the 40s or 50s and getting hail that big. Very impressive stuff. We'll wait just a moment for velocity to load. And yeah, so this to me shows that there is some rotation within this. I do think that we are seeing, we'll switch back over to reflectivity. Yeah, so this is also an example of side lobe contamination. Here's how I can tell. Right here, you don't see anything on the radar. There's no rain, there's no hail, there's nothing here. But when we switch to velocity, you'll be able to see in that same zone, and load in just a second, in that same zone just west of Hastings, a little bit southeast of Irving, as soon as it loads momentarily, you'll be able to see, yeah, all this kind of noisy junk right here in red. So these are likely spurious signals. So that to me tells me that the thing is elevated. There is some side lobe contamination going on. Don't worry about that. But I do think this thing is likely rotating. It's just rotating sort of higher up in the sky, such that we don't have to worry about a tornado threat. It's producing ping pong ball size hail, which I agree with. I think that is just getting to the point of almost being able to dent your vehicle. We'll look at this one near St. Joseph, Missouri, before I toss it back over to you, Erica. And let's see what's going on. It'll take, once again, just a second to load. We're actually looking at the Kansas City airport Doppler radar, which is super sensitive. Most radar apps do not have these terminal Doppler radars, the ultra sensitive FAA ones built in. We do. Another reason why I do love the app, and again, I know I work here, but I tend to be a pretty straight shooter. If there's something I really like, I say it. And in this case, the fact that we have terminal Doppler radar data built into the app when hardly any other weather app does is incredibly valuable because it's an ultra sensitive radar that just is able to spot and detect and see things that other radars can't. I can't tell you how many times I've been watching radars use a terminal radar to be able to see literally a tornado that I couldn't see with the Corsair National Weather Service Doppler radar. The constraints to terminal Doppler radar is that oftentimes the signal gets attenuated in heavy rain, so it kind of slows down, can't quite see as far. And the range isn't as far because the power isn't as high, but that's kind of a trade-off for a more sensitive observation. So I love it. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. We'll take a look at the National Weather Service Doppler radar, though, in, I believe, where in Kansas? Overton Park? Yeah. And we can see this storm a little bit northwest of St. Joseph has a teeny weeny hook on it. Not a big one, but a teeny weeny one east of White Cloud. Rotation within it, well, not too much right now. We're kind of far from the radar site, but in any case, there are a number of storms going on. And I want to just kind of recap the different weather alerts we have. Anybody in the yellow, that is a severe thunderstorm warning. Okay, that means damaging winds and or hail. No tornado warnings yet, which is good news. And I don't honestly see any storms that appear to me to be close to producing tornadoes, which is good stuff. I want to put on real quick, if we can, the tornado watches, just to show folks where the alerts are. So again, we flip this on real quick, and you'll be able to see everybody in the yellow. I'm going to fill the boxes right there. Everybody in the yellow, those are tornado watches. A watch means exist in a heightened state of awareness. Conditions are ripe for the development of severe weather, including large hail winds and tornadoes somewhere within this broader area, okay? That just means go throughout the evening, know where the shelter is, be able to be in shelter real quick if you need to be. But all told, no tornado warnings yet. That is good news. We'll turn off the tornado watches. You remember where they are. We'll focus mainly on the warnings. And Erica, for an event that's sort of getting going right now, I don't want to jinx it. And I know that sometimes it takes a little while to get things really cooking in environments like this, but I'm pleasantly surprised, knock on wood, that we don't have any tornado warnings yet. So we might as well celebrate when we can.
Yeah, hopefully some good news there, Matt, because I know this area last week, or I should say Friday, they were affected by these storms. And I know there's a lot of concern in this region about what the storms are going to do. I'm watching the chat here. And some of you were asking about North Liberty, Iowa. So you guys, like Matt was saying, you're under a tornado watch. So that means the environment is conducive to produce tornadoes. Although we're not seeing that now, we are seeing several strong storms. So not only do you have to be concerned for tornadoes, but also the potential of large hail. Some of these storms are already producing that this afternoon. Really, it's evening almost in those areas. So that's something to really watch for. Some of these storms right over Des Moines right now as we speak, there's several warnings in place. As you can see all along Interstate 35, there's about 4 severe thunderstorm warnings, most of these producing hail, which could make way for damage. So if you can at least try to protect your property, if it's out in the open, you don't want it to get damaged, try to protect them. And that's really what we're watching for tonight. Thankfully right now, no tornadoes. That's what we like to see, but we want you guys to stay aware throughout the rest of the evening. Ask your questions in the chat. I'll continue to monitor here. And if you missed meteorologist Matthew Capucci's explanation, he did a great explanation on why this forecast was tricky. We also have forecast videos, guys. If you're concerned about the next several hours, we can answer your questions here, but Matthew Capucci produces these great videos on our YouTube. If you're happening to watch us on the app, you see them on there as well. So you can get some of that information on there as well. But as you can see, that region that's shaded in red, all of these severe thunderstorm warnings are in that region for a tornado watch. So watch essentially means, again, the conditions are conducive for this. And we also have a severe thunderstorm watch right over Kansas City there, including areas of Kansas and Missouri. So some of these storms will be packing a punch as we get into the later evening hours. But so far right now across the Ozarks, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, no activity at least to report. Now that may get a little more robust as we head into the overnight hours. Matthew Capucci was showing a future radar, and I noticed with this future radar too, at least for my concern heading into the next several hours, I know some of you were asking about what's going on in Texas. You have the potential of seeing some strong storms. And something else to note too, although you guys aren't exactly in this moderate risk zone, if you're in this enhanced risk as well, you have the potential of seeing all modes of severe weather. This enhanced also stretches into portions of Texas, Oklahoma. So you guys also need to be on alert heading into the next several hours, but I think the threat will mostly be in the overnight, and that's what really concerns us. During this time of year, heading into April and May, overnight storms and overnight tornadoes happen more frequently during this time of year. And so that's what really poses a danger to these storms, because some people might be sleeping during this. And this is why we always reiterate, make sure to have those alerts turned on your phone. That is very essential, especially for this setup heading into the next several hours. So let's time it out for you guys. I'm seeing a lot of concern coming from areas of Texas and even across the Ozarks. So a lot of the activity right now is across the Midwest. That's really what we're going to focus on this evening, but I also want to make you aware of what's going on later on this evening, because as you can see, we're pushing this forward. This is 1 a.m. Most of the activity is in Kansas and Oklahoma. So that's when most of you guys are sleeping. It's in the middle of a work week. It's in the middle of a school week. So this is why it's very important to pay attention, have those alerts on if you do happen to fall asleep. And of course, if you have the MyRadar app, it'll keep you alert as well. But take a look at what happens. Now, this is a future radar. This isn't exactly what's going to happen, especially as our meteorologist was explaining. The atmosphere pretty much has a lid on it for some regions, especially we were looking at areas of the Ozarks. That lid, which is basically going to inhibit these storms to form, but doesn't mean it's a guarantee. These storms could break through the cap, essentially is what we call it, go over that lid and basically fire up. We're definitely noticing that with that future radar scan at about 4 o'clock in the morning, Central Time. And you can see there, just south of Dallas-Fort Worth to the east of Waco, this is along just to the west of Interstate 35, those storms start to really form. This is right in that prime time for the morning commute. So if you do have to travel, make sure that you're aware, maybe waking up a little bit earlier or maybe heading to work a little bit later than you usually do, because these storms, if you're driving on the roads, could really make way for low visibility and really cause some delays there. But you also don't want to be driving out in these conditions, because these storms could produce pretty gusty winds, large hail, and of course we can't rule out tornadoes. So this is looking at 5 o'clock in the morning. This is from the Dallas-Fort Worth area all the way down into Waco and even parts of possibly North Austin, all the way up into portions of Missouri. And as we take this forward, you can see most of that storm activity to the east of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area at around 6 o'clock in the morning. So that's really what concerns us with these storms in the southern tier of the country. So if you're asking about Houston, I think your storms will arrive later in the afternoon. We're not really watching a risk of severe weather over this area, but it's definitely possible. I think one of the biggest threats, especially across the Gulf Coast states over the next several days, is going to be a lot of rain. So that means flooding is definitely going to be possible in those areas. So, a lot of activity, a lot of moving parts with the storm system, because if you also notice on your screen, you're seeing snow, some wintry mix. There is currently right now on the other side of this potent storm, a blizzard warning in some of these regions. So, we're kind of getting the clash of the seasons. It's April. We're already in full on spring, and this is what we typically see. Earlier today, I actually saw a report that I think it was Casper, Wyoming, has received, I think, the most snowfall for the season. They broke a record there. So, definitely been a snowy season for some of you guys across the Midwest. You're getting a little bit of that snow, but you're also seeing some of those severe weather risks. So a lot going on in the atmosphere. It's pretty active this evening, but although right now we are starting things off a little bit slow in terms of tornado warnings, but we knew that going into tonight, we knew this was going to be mostly a late evening into overnight threat. And this is why as well, the Storm Prediction Center has issued those tornado watches again. If you're under this tornado watch, so that does include you guys in Iowa, anywhere from central Iowa all the way down just south of Cedar Rapids, you're under this tornado watch. So be prepared for the potential of tornadoes into the overnight hours. Make sure you know where to go when there's a tornado warning. So warning meaning you need to seek shelter immediately. You need to know what to do or where to seek shelter. Maybe you're in a mobile home, know where to go. If you have family or friends that have more of a sturdy structure, make sure to stay with them in the overnight hours just to stay safe heading into the next several hours if you do live in a mobile home. So I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in, a lot of you guys watching us from Iowa. So we definitely love to see that. We definitely love to see that hopefully this information is useful to you heading into the overnight hours and especially into the evening. So yeah, some of you reporting lightning, thunder, and winds in Harvey, Iowa. Friends in Des Moines reporting hail. So yeah, those are the storms that are moving in. So if we go to the MyRadar app, moving in through pretty much to the east side of Des Moines. So Des Moines, a lot of rain coming into the city, but you're not exactly under a severe thunderstorm warning. Well, we're really seeing these severe thunderstorm warnings is just to the south of Des Moines, of the metro area. So we're talking about you guys in Lucas County, Polk, Madison, Marion, Clark, and Warren counties. It's a severe thunderstorm that is producing 2-inch hail. So that's damaging hail and 60-mile-per-hour winds. This is being reported by storm spotters that are in that area. So actually, if we pull up this chaser feed, and this is from Mickey Gribble, he's right in front of the storm. And I would imagine he's right in front. So if we take a look at what's going on the radar, he might be right in front of this hail core that's coming into this region. So far right now, not seeing any hail on his camera, if there's any hail being produced down here, but yeah, definitely packing a punch, getting in there. A lot of reports of hail, large hail being reported across Iowa. I was seeing pictures earlier on social media, but there you go. Mickey, not really seeing much right now. It's clear, but if you were to turn the camera, I think a little bit more to the left, I think you would see more of the storm. So he's right on that storm, and just to the south of him, Aaron Pippin. And of course, this is courtesy of Severe Storm Studio. This is their live chaser feed, and there's a lot of activity on there. So if you have the premium version of the app, you have access to this. You can track these storms with these guys who are out in the field giving us visuals of what's going on there. It's still light there, not exactly sunset, but we're nearing that. And that's what's going to make these storms a little bit more dangerous. So as he's panning that camera, you can definitely see the storm coming into the region. I'm not seeing any noticeable features with the storm, but this one is the one that is producing 2-inch hail out there in Iowa, and he is close to Lucas, Iowa right now, and that severe thunderstorm warning is just to the north of Mickey there, or I should say Aaron. Mickey's just to the north of that region, and then to the north of Des Moines, that's where we're seeing another severe thunderstorm warning, also packing a punch with hail, quarter-size hail, at least being reported with this one, and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So I think the most dangerous storm out of these two would be the one on the southern end of Des Moines, and that's the one that's producing 2-inch hail. And you can see pretty much a line of thunderstorms coming into central Iowa, and then that'll eventually track to these. But it looks like they just warned this storm, so now we have an official tornado warning. And so let's take a look. So tornado and ping pong sized hail. I'm not seeing if this is a confirmed tornado just yet. I think this might just be radar indicated here. So ping pong size hail. Not only do we have the danger of tornado being produced with this, so this is again for, let's see, southeastern McDonough County and west central Illinois until 7:15. So nothing confirmed yet, but this is a tornado warning. We have several chasers on this storm. So let me actually pan over the per station radar and get a better image of what this storm is doing here. Again, this is a tornado warning that's now in effect for McDonough County in west central Illinois. And let's take a look at velocity here. So this is a newly issued tornado warning again. And as that loads there, I might be a little bit too far with that radar. But yeah, it's definitely coming into that southern region near Birmingham, Illinois. And you can kind of see where the center of maybe the rotation is. But again, this is radar indicated, nothing confirmed on the ground, but this is a tornado warning issued for that region. And so far right now, this is our only tornado warning. But we'll take a look and see if any of these chasers are seeing anything. So Owen McCormick, he's on the storm. I'm not really seeing anything in his shot. He's a little bit to the northeastern of the storm. Freddie McKinney, very close, but also not seeing anything on the ground right now with this particular storm. And you can see Jordan Hall, he's coming very close to the storm. Again, if this were to drop, I think we'd see it on the chaser feed. But either way, if you're under this tornado warning, you need to be seeking shelter immediately. Go to your safe zone in your home, or go into a sturdy structure if you do happen to be in a mobile home in this region.
Erica?
Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
Erica, a quick question. Would you mind putting up the, right near your cursor right now, there's one of the storm chaser feeds. Can we take a look at that real quick, please?
Yes. Which storm
Awesome.
chaser feed is it?
The one just near your cursor. Yeah, that one right there.
This one.
I'm very curious because if
Jordan
that
Hall.
chaser is driving, yeah, so it looks like he's driving westbound. You can just barely see some kind of rugged cloud cover in the bottom left of that shot. Very tough to see right there. But he will be heading in the next about 10 minutes in a position where he'll be able to see the wall cloud, or the rotating part, kind of the backside of that storm, kind of where the hook would be. Remember, he's right here. He's driving west. The hook will be down here. And so he's heading in that direction. But again, this is our first tornado warning of the evening. It is in effect for the next little while, and this goes for parts of McDonough County in west central Illinois. So Dodsonville around 6:45 p.m., Industry in McDonough County 4-H grounds around 6:50 p.m., Macomb, Western Illinois University, and Pennington Point around 6:55. So everybody at the university, you want to be in your safe place. Parents, if you have kiddos there, give them a ring real quick. Let them know they should be in their shelter or a safe place. They want to be as low as they can be and away from windows. And eventually Adair and Macomb Municipal Airport around 7 o'clock tonight. That is Central Time. This tornado warning goes until 7:15 p.m. If we can switch over to the Mac Mini real quick, I want to show folks sort of what the storm is doing right now and why it is of concern. Obviously, there's nothing else around it right now. So it is alone, it is discrete, it is isolated. So it can kind of gobble up all the atmospheres of volatility nearby. You can see that red box right there is the tornado warning. What I'll do real quick is just actually take away that red box just so we can actually see the radar a little bit better. I'm going to make the red box a hollow just to make it a little bit easier to see. Then we'll point out a few key features. So one key feature I want to point out is this sort of notch right here, a little bit west of Industry. It'll take just a second for the radar to load. But right where my cursor is, okay, this is what we call the inflow notch, that little area without rain. This little teeny notch right here is warm, moist air going in to fuel the circulation. Over here, this kind of hook in the backside, that's cool air wrapping around, tightening the circulation, but also coming down with rain, with hail, and kind of goes down, the air goes down to the ground, splats out, surges forward, causes this little kind of forward bow right here, and the warm, moist air screams in along that. And along that interface, you kind of get this spin and kind of stretch the spin you need to get a tornado. So if there was a tornado, it'd be sort of right in here, west of Industry, northwest of Littleton. We'll switch over to velocity right now and see if we can peer inside the storm and ascertain what's going on. And yeah, I mean, there is a lot of spin with this, Erica. It makes sense that there's a tornado warning in effect.
Yeah, and if Capucci, Jordan Hall has a really great picture of the supercell there. Although we can't see it in his stream, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter. Maybe I'll share it here on the app, but some pretty decent structure on this storm right now.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like he's turning left. It's tough to sort of see what's going on. If there's a way we can pull that Twitter picture up on screen, that would be great. Erica doing a superb job as always, sort of driving the radar and driving both that and social media. She can do 1,000,005 things at once, and I can barely drive one of these things. So let's see. She's pulling up the picture real quick. And wow, okay, that is a textbook super. And what you're looking at right there is kind of the birthday cake striated structure. Again, this from our contracted storm chaser, Jordan Hall, who's out in the field right now. And essentially on the right, so he's looking west-southwest right now. On the right is where the rain, the hail is, the downdraft region. But you're looking right in the middle of the screen. Yeah, okay, perfectly, just like that. You see tier after tier after tier. It's kind of like a floating evil birthday cake. The whole thing in your screen is spinning left to right, counterclockwise spin. Way high aloft, you see clouds that look to be kind of way up there, fanning away. That is the anvil of the storm. And then just barely, you see that second utility pole on the bottom left of the image, that second one. And Damien, if we can take that full screen, that'd be great real quick. Yeah, thank you. So that second utility pole, just to the right of that, you see kind of a darker region underneath the rotating updraft. That would be where the wall cloud would be, kind of that lowering, just barely visible, about a third of the way to the right in the image to the right of that second utility pole. So that's kind of where the concentrated rotation for potential tornado would be. So yeah, I mean, it looks the part. It's an environment that is primed to do something. And if we take a look back at the Mac Mini radar one more time, we'll show folks sort of the pattern and why it's kind of concerning. So obviously red is going away from the radar, green is going towards. There's a stout couplet right here. Now, it's a very scary signature, but here's why I think it might be a little bit erroneous. Notice where all the scary blues are. We switched back to reflectivity mode. A lot of them are right over here. That's kind of on the edge of the rainfall. And in fact, some of the velocity signatures are coming in areas where there's actually no rain falling. So some of it may be something called side lobe contamination, where the radar beam is essentially kind of on the fringe of the radiation, going up and grabbing velocities from higher in the storm and mapping them lower to the ground, as if there was more wind there than there actually is closer to the surface. So I think there is rotation within the storm. The National Weather Service was correct to issue this tornado warning. You saw on Jordan's shot, obvious spin. I don't think the rotation is as intense as that radar image we showed you just a moment ago is. But regardless, this area right here, this little notch, is where I would watch for a potential tornado heading in the direction of Macomb, soon to cross between Industry and Macomb on the highway there. So again, Erica, folks should be in their shelter. They should be in their safe place at the university especially. And we're going to keep tracking this. But yeah, the storm chaser feeds are quite impressive.
Yeah, I mean, and the good thing with this, at least, there's a lot of cameras, a lot of eyes on the storm. So if we do see anything pop up, we'll be seeing it on that camera. Something else I wanted to show real quick here on social media, and I just shared this on the MyRadar Weather Twitter page, is look at this hail. We were talking about this earlier. This is in Osceola, southwest of Osceola in Iowa. Take a look at this. And I think he's holding a quarter there. Look how giant this hailstone is. So pretty significant. And although these areas aren't necessarily warned, I want you guys to take severe thunderstorm warnings especially seriously, because this is the type of hail that can fall from these storms, and that can definitely leave some damage behind there. So just something that I wanted to mention there really quickly. This activity, again, it's getting going pretty quickly this evening. So this is the exact time frame that we were watching for these storms to develop. And, we already see our second tornado warning. And just so that same storm that I was showing you with the hail, there's a new tornado warning on this. And this is for, let's see, Lucas County, Poshiak County, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Marion County, and Mashaka County, Jasper, and Warren until 7:30 p.m. Also for the potential of seeing ping pong sized hail. So you already saw that giant hailstone. This is the same storm, and this is coming into those zones. We have a lot of chaser cams on this as well. So let's take a look at those really quickly. And let's see if we're getting any visuals. So, oh, wow, look at this one, Matt. This is from Mickey Gribble. You can definitely see the storm there in the distance. Wow. And let's see what this other chase. So this one, I think Aaron's right on top of the storm. So yeah, you're definitely seeing a lot of good visuals on this storm. So if there were a tornado to be on the ground, which you should be in your shelter either way, if you're in these counties we just read off, there is a tornado warning. And again, this is what we were watching. This is the storms now starting to get a little bit more robust over this area. Now 2 tornado warnings for the state of Iowa and 1 in Illinois.
And Damien, if we could take the Mac Mini real quick, I want to show folks kind of a tour of this storm from the Des Moines radar. This is just southeast of the Des Moines metro area. It is very concerning. This is a new tornado warning, and the signature is kind of tightening up very quickly in real time. We look at this, and this looks like a textbook classic rotating supercell. What you're seeing is what we call the inflow notch being right here, this kind of notch without any precipitation. This is where warm, moist air is rushing in to fuel the circulation. On the backside, you get rain, hail, and some cool air kind of wrapping back around that spin. That goes down and kind of splats out at the ground, surges forward, and tightens that circulation even more. And so eventually, you get all this kind of wraparound. The potential tornado would be located right at the apex in the middle of this hook right here. So the signatures are rather concerning. This came together rather quickly. This tornado warning is in effect for the next little while. And again, we're getting new radar scans every moment or so. So tornado and ping pong ball size hail, the main concerns with this. If you live in the Melcher, Dallas area, 6:55 p.m., it's right over you. Pleasantville around 7 o'clock tonight. Knoxville, the Raceway, and the Municipal Airport around 7:05. So you want to be in your safe place. So it looks like,
Matt, we do have an observed tornado with that storm.
All right, a confirmed tornado. And let me know if that is observed via trained spotters, or we're going to look at radar real quick. And you can see green, obviously, towards the radar. Red is away. Very strong couplet with this. and we'll see if there's anything on correlation coefficient to see if we can see any debris on the radar. It's kind of inconclusive right now. It's tough to see if there's anything sort of going on with this in terms of debris.
Okay, so sorry about that, Matt, but the observed tornado is actually for the one in Illinois, and
Gotcha,
that's
thank you.
Macomb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So for folks in Knoxville, right along Highway 5, you want to be in your shelter. The Nearwood Winery, you have to be in shelter. Folks along, it looks like Kirkwood Street, Highway G44, 92, where the 92 and the 5 interchange is. The Hy-Vee Grocery Store, Knoxville Raceway, the Red Carpet Motel, Super 8 by Wyndham Knoxville. All those folks are going to be in their shelter right now. This will pass near Lacona, Melcher Davis, pass over some rather rural areas, and eventually head in the direction of Knoxville in the next little while. So folks, kind of along the White Breast Creek area, it looks like it'll be passing near you. But on radar, it is a very compelling signature. That thing is moving north and east. It may pass just north of the city of Knoxville, but regardless, everybody needs to be in shelter. I think it'll cross right near the Red Rock Lake area between Knoxville and Monroe. So be in your safe place. Try to put as many layers between yourself and the outside world as you can. Again, this tornado warning in effect until 7:15 Central Time for the next 20 minutes. Erica, thereafter, some potential good news. It may eventually sort of outrun the warm air and cross north of that cool air boundary. But until then, it is a concerning signature. We are not seeing any evidence of debris yet as this passes north of Lacona, a little bit southeast of Milo. It's kind of a messy signature on the correlation coefficient. But the thing I want to point out and leave folks with is this on velocity. The red against green, very prominent in two different directions over a short distance, the inference, of course, rotation. And with that, let's sort of jump back on over to our observed tornado in Illinois with that other cell. This is for the same area that earlier on, a little bit southwest of Peoria, had prompted that tornado warning we were talking about. We'll switch over to the Davenport radar. And again, it might take a second to load. A lot of folks are watching the stream right now. It is a messy, messy signature, actually, two potential circulations with this. And just so we can kind of get our bearings, we'll throw on reflectivity. And again, like I said, a messy signature, rather tough to spot. I think this may be a rain wrap tornado in here. There's
Matt, and I'm looking at Jordan Hall's feed, and so just a lot of rain. He's right on this storm. I think he's near Industry there, but not really seeing a good image. Damien, I don't know if you can pull that up there. Let's try to get that in there. And I'll show you, Matt, what's going on the ground. But that's pretty much what he sees. I mean, can't really see much there.
Yeah, I mean, this thing looks to me to be fully rain wrapped. I don't think a chaser is going to be able to see it. And if for the folks at home, if a chaser can't see it, then you darn well aren't going to be able to see it. These chasers are the most experienced folks. They've been through storm after storm. And if they can't find the tornado and there's one in there, then odds are you are not going to be able to see it either. Ooh, which radar are you using, Erica? That is a phenomenal radar shot. Golly, look at that.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that structure.
My goodness. Yeah, so that is that classic birthday cake structure. Is this on the cell in Illinois, correct?
Yes, that's the one that has an observed tag with it. They did extend that tornado warning, but let's see. I'm using the KILX radar there. And
okay, so you're using Lincoln, Illinois. Very good. Yeah, so, okay, I was using Davenport. If we switch back to, all right. So if we switch back to the, here we go. Let's switch back to Mac Mini for a second, and I'll kind of talk through what Erica, actually, we'll keep that picture up real quick. So Erica is showing us a great shot from Owen McCormick, who was likely east of the storms, and looking back sort of west. You can see the updraft region where the air is kind of rotating very quickly, spiraling upwards like a barber pole. And on the right side, that appears to be a wall cloud. There may be intermittent funnels kind of dangling beneath that and or touching down. We'll kind of get an update on that in just a moment. But let's switch on over to the radar Mac Mini real quick. And Damien doing a great job switching things behind the scenes. So this chaser is likely near Lewiston, kind of looking back, or near Table Grove, looking back west in the direction of this kind of nasty, messy cluster. We'll switch it over to velocity, though. And you can very plainly see this is a strong indication of a tornado, a little bit southeast of Industry, west of Vermont, southwest of Table Grove. So for folks in this area, you have got to be in shelter. Red is away from the radar, green and blue is towards. Here's the rotation right now, obviously very concerning. This was at 6:52 p.m. This tornado reported 5 miles east-northeast of Fandon. So again, Vermont will be right over you at 7:05, Ipava at 7:10. Eventually, Lewiston and Cuba also in line for this storm. Ipava is right here. So this is kind of along the main road right there. And it is definitely pretty concerning to see sort of what is going on with this cell. We'll switch on over to correlation coefficient too, and see if we can find any debris in the atmosphere. Correlation coefficient, of course, a product that shows us the shape of whatever's in the atmosphere. and no kind of bullseyes of blue with this. It's kind of a messy signature, so nothing yet with that. But Erica, folks in that area do need to be below ground, especially at the local university there, which is kind of the most concerning part with this. Folks in Fulton, Shoreland counties have to be below ground.
Yeah, Matt. And on social media, I'm seeing now a footage of a confirmed tornado in Iowa. I'm not really seeing that. So actually, Aaron, I think you can see that tornado. Can you see it on there? I'm not sure if it's touching the ground. Might just be a funnel, but you can see it on his footage. And this again, this is in Iowa. That's for that tornado warning that's issued right now. And you see it there on your screen. That's a tornado. We're watching a tornado live on this feed. And that, again, that's in Iowa. This is why we tell you to seek shelter. These tornadoes can drop at any moment. And let's take a look at that signature. So I don't have the radar here loaded, but that's already 2 tornado warnings now confirmed. And so this is just the atmosphere conducive for it. So we'll leave that shot up there as this tornado is now going behind this tree. But again, this is a confirmed tornado on the ground. This is storm chaser footage from Aaron Pippin, who's in Iowa, courtesy of Severe Studios there in Iowa.
Yeah, so for the folks at home watching right now, this is southeast of Des Moines. This is south of Interstate 80, right along Highway 92, soon to cross near Pleasantville and Knoxville. So for folks in Pleasantville, Knoxville, you have to be in your shelter right now, lowest floor of whatever building you're in, and avoiding windows. Mobile home vehicle authorities want to get to a site-built location. Right now, the circulation is just east of Milo, so it's passing over open fields. It is soon to pass over the Motor Friends Church, 2 old roads, Provisions, G48, the Fairview Christian Church. Thereafter, it'll pass pretty much directly over the Eden Church, or just northwest along Highway 5 in the Shire Cemetery, the Hope Service Seasonal and Maintenance Area. Then it's looking for areas just near or north of Knoxville along Highway 14 near Lake Red Rock. So for folks in that area, it's not a super urban area, but it's one where you want to make sure that if you know folks in that area that they're in their shelters right now. This is a confirmed tornado. We can see it very plainly. And yeah, I mean, it's sort of behind those trees right there. The funnel is just barely discernible. We can see the obvious rapid motions with the clouds. It is a well put together tornado. One thing to note too, you're seeing some sunshine there. These tornadoes oftentimes form on the backside of the storm. What you're seeing is a very kind of textbook structure. So that clear area, that area of sort of luminance ahead of the funnel, is what we call the clear slot. That's essentially cool, dry air wrapping in, punching into the storm to tighten that spin, and also kind of literally punch out any precipitation. But that helps to really stretch that funnel vertically, get it nice and tight, and enhance that risk of a tornado right there, which you can see obviously pushing off to the north and east at about, looks like 40 plus miles per hour. So folks in or north of Knoxville along Highway 14, you have to be in shelter right now. Red Rock, the lake, the cemetery nearby, you guys are next in line. And eventually, I think it will miss the city of Knoxville just barely, but you still want to be in your tornado safe places. For folks along Highway 14. Kennedy Street northwards has the greatest risk. Same thing for White Breast Creek and northwards. Folks along the creek are kind of going to be the dividing line, so to speak, for greater impacts farther north. But for folks near the Hope Seasonal Service and Maintenance area, the Wren Cemetery, Pine Ridge Escape, and a little bit north of Eden Church along Highway 5, you guys are next in line for this tornado, which is confirmed at this point. We have pictures, we have video, and we have radar confirmation as well. So again, we are watching this right now. Indications right now via radar that in the next little while, and if actually we can switch to the Mac Mini, there are indications that in the next little while, this thing will likely become a rain wrap. We're seeing something on radar called a BWER, or a bounded weak echo region. Here's a radar, and let me know when the Mac Mini is up. I believe it is. Thank you, Damien. So you're seeing right here, tornadoes obviously in the middle of this donut hole, this BWER, the bounded weak echo region. And what's happening is 2 things. Number 1, the rear flank downdraft, the circulation is literally swirling precipitation all around the tornado. So it's completely rain wrapped. And number 2, in this little notch, in this little kind of a void, if you will, there's such an upward motion associated with this tornadic funnel that precipitation is suspended. It can't fall. And so you're not getting much in the way of precip reaching the ground only within that immediate tornado vicinity, which is why you get this kind of void right here. So again, might be rain wrapped, but very obvious circulation on radar, very obvious tornado in person. You have to be in your tornado safe place right now. And Erica, this is one of several storms we're watching at this juncture.
Yeah, Matt. And I'm just keeping an eye on Aaron's storm chaser feed here, and it's pretty incredible. The tornado, I think it's still on the ground. Cars are driving by. He's pretty good distance away from the storm, but we're definitely going to see if maybe down the line the National Weather Service will extend this tornado warning. So we're talking about you guys. So this is going to go over Lake Red Rock, and if you're downstream of this storm, so we're talking about you guys in Pella, Sully, Linville, and Searborough, you're not exactly under this tornado warning, but I want you guys to stay prepared down the line here. And then this same storm might potentially cross Interstate 80 there in Iowa. So that's something, if you live in that area, you're not under this tornado warning, you need to be on alert, especially because this is already producing a tornado on the ground. Again, this is for that tornado warning just to the south east of Des Moines, Iowa. And this is an observed tornado warning. We're seeing that on camera now from our storm chaser here in the MyRadar app, Aaron Pippin. And so it looks like it's still on the ground. It's been warned for several minutes now. So I need you guys, if you live in this region, and I know a lot of you guys are watching us from Iowa, if you live in this zone, make sure that you're seeking shelter. Go to the most interior portion of your home, away from exterior walls and windows. If you have a basement, that is the best area to seek shelter in this region. But of course, 2 tornado warnings, and they're both observed and confirmed. So this is the atmosphere we're working with. It's conducive for this potential, and especially over the Midwest. This is what we're watching for over the next several hours. But
And Erica,
go ahead, Matt.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, Pleasantville in Iowa looks to be directly in the path of this storm. Pleasantville High School, Pleasantville Golf and Country Club. It's a small town. It doesn't have a ton of people, but regardless, there are about 1,700 people who live in Pleasantville. You guys are directly in the path of this potential tornado, which we know is on the ground. So again, it may or may not lift. Fingers crossed it does. But until then, folks, anywhere near the Sutter Family Farms, Jolly Acres, in downtown Pleasantville, the Wild Creek Wire Hairs area, right along Highway 5 or northeast of 92, you have to be in your shelter right now. As Erica said, this thing is heading kind of directly for Pleasantville. Pleasantville right now is seeing, unfortunately, looks to me to be big hail. So they're dealing with hail to about lime size right now. Then they might briefly get a lull. That doesn't mean it's over. They are seconds, if not just moments, away from getting a tornado sort of in their immediate vicinity. It may pass just south of town by just a very subtle bit, but I don't really think that will be the case. I mean,
Yeah, Matt,
Erica,
and
to me, this looks like a dead hitch for Pleasantville.
yeah, and within this warning zone, about 32,000 people live in this region, in this polygon. So this is a very populated region in Iowa. If you have family, friends that live in this region, make sure they're aware, maybe not directly under the storm, but if they're in Monroe, for instance, along State Route 163, Pella, on the other side of the lake, make sure they are aware of the storm. It's pretty much knocking on your doorstep. And I hope you have those tornado warnings or the alerts turned on your phone, because this is a pretty dangerous storm. If we go back, let's check in on Aaron and see if he's still seeing. So it looks like he's now tracking the storm, not seeing that view he was seeing earlier. So it's hard to tell if there's still a tornado on the ground, but either way, you need to be seeking shelter if you're in this zone. Another region that we're watching as well is another state away. It's in Illinois, and we have several chaser feeds here. So I'm going to take a look at these really quickly and see if there's anything on the ground. Pretty dark sky there. Of course, we're nearing sunset time in this region. And so that's what's going to make things a little bit tricky into the next several hours. And if we take a look at these chaser feeds, so it looks like we're not getting good signal out here. We have Jordan Hall, who's out chasing the storm, but this is another tornado warning that's in effect for areas of Illinois. And this still, as of a minute ago, the National Weather Service has an observed tag. So this is something on the ground. About 6,000 of you in Illinois live under this tornado warning. So this is Table Grove, Vermont, Smithfield, Marietta, Cuba, and Lewistown. Some of the highways in the path of the storm would be Interstate or Highway 138. Highway 24. Again, this is in Illinois, and this is for Lewistown, Illinois, Cuba, and Vermont until 7:30 p.m. Central Time. So this is again an observed tornado warning. That's already 2 of them that we're seeing this evening. And this is nearing Peoria. It's just to the west of Peoria, Illinois there. So you definitely need to be seeking shelter if you live in this area. The National Weather Service did extend this tornado warning into those cities of Cass, Lewistown, Farmers. So you still got a little bit of time, but you need to be in your tornado safe place, your shelter, wherever is the most safe location in your home, because this is an active tornado warning. So let's go back to the radar here and show you what's going on just from looking at the radar signatures here. So this is a pretty potent storm still observed on the ground. We're not seeing very much chaser camera feed from this storm. Can't really see anything, as it looks like these chasers are kind of driving either into or away from the storm, but you can see the velocity signature there, and that's where you see kind of where the reds and greens are coming together. That's indicating that the storm is rotating, and we can definitely tell with that on radar. Correlation coefficient, which I like to call a debris tracker, not noticing very much on there right now, but there's definitely something on the ground. You can kind of see the storm potentially maybe even hooking a little bit there, just to the south of Table Grove. But again, these are two dangerous storms, one in Iowa and one back here in Illinois, both observed. But really, I think something with these storms is in this zone, you could see these storms for miles. Now, once it gets dark, that's where the danger really looms with these storms heading into the next several hours. And so definitely watching these tornado warnings, but look at all of this activity already starting to bubble up just to the west of this storm. Look at all those severe thunderstorm warnings. All of these have the potential of becoming tornadic later on in the evening just because of the environment they're coming into. And that also is true for areas of Illinois, where this tornado warning has pretty much been warned as this storm is now moving closer and closer to Peoria. So that's what concerns me with this particular tornado warning, especially if you're in Table Grove, Vermont. You need to be seeking shelter. But down the line, if you're along Interstate 24, this storm is going to cross this area, maybe even go parallel to the interstate, and then as it inches closer to Peoria, that's my concern down the line. So if you live there, just stay aware, know what the storm is doing, because this might come into your neck of the woods. And so I'm seeing a lot of questions here from a lot of you guys that live in Iowa. Let's see. Princeton, Illinois. So I'm not really sure where that is, but let me look that up really quickly. And okay, so Princeton, I think, is just a little bit north of Peoria. Right now, not very much activity, but again, I think you guys are under this tornado watch for the rest of the evening. So, and let's pull that up here. Yeah, so, you know, these storms could come in pretty quickly. It looks like you are getting a little bit of rain up there, but you're not warned, at least as of right now. But since you're under this tornado watch, definitely be on alert this evening. And of course, we'll be here. So if you are more concerned about this storm down the line, we'll be happy to answer your questions. Of course, we'll let you know if you do happen to be under a severe thunderstorm warning or even a tornado warning. But either way, these storms are still packing a punch over these regions in Illinois and even Iowa. And I'm going to take a quick look at what these chaser cams are doing here. And this is for the one in Illinois. So I'm not seeing anything on the ground right now. And I think the latest warning with this storm, I haven't gotten any recent updates from the National Weather Service if this is still on the ground. But we still have an observed tornado there in Illinois. And several severe thunderstorm warnings. Go ahead, Matt.
Interestingly, so one small piece of good news for the folks in Iowa who are under that tornado warning. It looks to me like in the next little while, the storm in question will start moving into a cooler air mass just north of Des Moines. Remember how Des Moines is kind of on the fringe? So I really think that tornado doesn't have long for this world, which is good. You know, the whole storm is moving into an area that's just less favorable. It's much cooler. It's moving to an area where storms will be elevated. So that's why we said earlier on, if that storm that earlier, I mean, we talked about this storm about an hour ago. We said if it's going to produce, it has to in the next little while. It did. It's moving into an area where, you know, it's not as warm, and it's basically losing fuel. It's kind of outrunning the support that has given rise to it. Des Moines right now is right on the fringe. Like once you get to Grinnell, Marshalltown, temperatures are much cooler and the storms are mainly elevated. The one near Peoria, though, that's a concerning one because, Erica, as you said, you know, it's in that warm, moist area. There's a confirmed tornado on the ground right now. And I mean, the velocities with it are very impressive. And here's the thing. I think that one, too, is kind of right turning right now, the one in a little bit southwest of Peoria. So actually, let me pull up the radar real quick from the Mac Mini. We'll go revisit that Peoria one. Ignore me while I slowly transition the radar. You don't want rock island. You want. It's one nice thing. There's so many radars to choose from, which is beautiful. A great thing about the MyRadar app. So yeah, we are looking at the southwest of Peoria, and let me know. Awesome. Thank you, Damien, for pulling it up. Gosh, Damien, you are fast. Appreciate that. So within this storm, we'll do a quick anatomy of it. I love the folks behind the scenes. They make me look and sound better than I actually am. And so a little bit north of Benedetto and
Wow,
southeast of
there's
like
so much
Marietta.
footage. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of hail. Do we have some good imagery of that?
I'm just watching all this footage of the tornado we caught on camera here just a couple of moments ago. It's pretty incredible there.
And this is the one in Illinois or Iowa?
I think this is the one in Iowa. Yeah, it looks like a rope tornado from what I'm seeing. That's what we were watching earlier.
Yeah, so we'll revisit that one in just a moment. But I will say right now, the weather spotters are still confirming a tornado as a 7:02 Central Time with this one west of Peoria. And this was about 3 miles west of Table Grove at that point. So the tornado likely right now is kind of right in here, sort of the inside part of the inflow notch, right near Ipava. So I'm concerned about the town of Ipava. I think it is precariously close to them. And let me just pull up a little bit more information showing some mapping. So for the folks right near the, looks like Highway 136, south of Camp Ellis, the landing strip there, Ipava, it's kind of right over you right now. It will soon continue eastwards along 136, eventually pushing over, actually right near the railroad tracks. So for example, on East Square Road, North Sumnum Road, or North Dead End Road, that's a helpful name. Ironically, Dead End Road is not a dead end. Would have thought that. East Mile Load Road for folks near the Mason Construction Service Incorporated. You guys are all next in line. Same thing for folks near, looks like Tater Creek. So anyone near Tater Creek needs to be in shelter. Same thing for the folks along the Spoon River. Eventually near and north of Duncan Mills, between Duncan Mills and Lewistown, along Highway is pushing east. Inflow notch right here. You know, the interesting thing is that the tip of the hook's almost broken off from the main thing. And let's actually look at velocity. And obviously, right against green, it is right on top of Ipava. We'll see if we can look at the correlation coefficient. Erica says called the debris tracker, which is exactly right. We can oftentimes look at this for information as to whether or not there is debris. We don't see anything clear cut on that, but it is a very pronounced storm, and one that is looking progressively better and better structurally from the radar I'm looking at off screen, which is more and more concerning. You're also seeing more purple here too, which to me tells me there's a lot of hail to work with. So Liverpool, Bryant, Smithfield, Cuba, St. David, even a little bit north of Lewistown especially, expect some hail to about hen egg size, if not a little bit bigger. So that's next in line. Let's revisit real quickly, though, that tornado warning that Erica was talking about moments ago. Southeast of Des Moines, we'll switch back over to the Des Moines radar. And you'll be able to see a couple different trends with this. It is not looking nearly as picturesque from a data standpoint as it was earlier on. If we back up a little bit, right when it produced the tornado, I mean, look at this. It was really organized for just a couple scans. It produced a tornado probably near or northwest of Lacona. Back when it had a really good hook echo with it. And then eventually, it kind of wavered, it kept going, and now it's sort of a shell of its former self. It might be trying to recycle, because if we go back a little bit, here's where the circulation was, middle of the donut hole. Follow that, oh no, hang on. Follow that donut hole though. It's now, here we go. Yeah. So you can see the donut hole near Pleasantville. I think the thing probably lifted near Pleasantville, just southwest. And then look, it kind of gets hollow, kind of gets all messy, and there may be a new circulation trying to develop near Lake Red Rock. If we put on velocity, though, we'll be able to sort of peer inside the storm and just see how much rotation there actually is. I don't foresee there being a ton. I don't. And by the way, I'm monitoring another radar off screen. There are indications that the storm in Illinois is becoming rain wrapped right now. So, I think this storm is almost done. The Iowa one that produced a tornado a little bit earlier on, there's still some spin within it. And for folks in the tornado warning for the next, looks like let's say 16 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever, you want to be in your shelter. This was still confirmed as of 4 minutes ago over Elk Rock State Park. Weather spotters are saying it's still there. The storm is not looking nearly as good as it once was, but in the case that it's still on the ground, you want to treat it seriously just in case. Interstate 80, this tornado will likely cross near mile marker 171 if it does hold together. So that's something we have to watch down the road too. A number of severe thunderstorm warnings nearby too, east of Des Moines, southwest of Des Moines, due south of Des Moines. Des Moines thus far has remained very lucky. This one, approaching Winterset, which you'll remember was back where the tornado hit last March. This one approaching Winterset, Erica, is not a classic supercell, but I'm beginning to see a bit of a hook right here near Maxburg. And there may be some rotation trying to spark up right there. I don't necessarily see it as overly pronounced near Maxburg, but it's still something to watch. And these ones farther south and west are not yet in the key prime tornado producing environment. This is all going to be aligned. This will be aligned with damaging straight line winds and a few embedded kinks of rotation. Ultimately, I think these two tornado warnings are, the big games in town, so to speak, and those are the most concerning. But Erica, what are you seeing from your end?
Yeah, I'm just monitoring social media, and I've never seen so much footage of this tornado that we caught here live. All the chasers were on this storm, and there's a lot of footage. I'm not really sure if it's still on the ground here. And from what I can see, just pretty impressive. I'm glued, honestly, to these videos because it's just so impressive to see on camera here. So seeing some reports of large hail in and around just south of Des Moines where that storm passed. But I think the good news with this tornado is it looks like it wasn't anywhere too populated. It was in the middle of nowhere. And those are the kinds of storms we like to see. But this is coming into a region just now to the east of Des Moines where it might be a little bit more populated. So at least that's some good news with this tornado that this storm that did produce a tornado there. But I'm just seeing so much footage, so much video of this specific storm in Iowa that touched ground there. So just impressive. I'm glued there. But let's take a look at what it's doing now. And as you can see on your screen, we still have the storm chaser layer on. I think it was Aaron who caught this rope tornado, pretty much picking up some debris there, some dirt. Thankfully, doesn't look like it was close to anything populated. Right now, not seeing it on the ground, which is some good news. But if we take a look at what's going on here with the latest velocity scan, also not noticing too much activity here as the latest scan loads. But let's go back here to composite reflectivity, and it's coming over Lake Red Rock. So as it comes over the lake, areas like Monroe, Sully, Rainer, and possibly Linville, and even Searsboro. We were talking about this a couple of minutes ago. Now you're getting into that tail end of the polygon. We'll have to wait and see if the National Weather Service extends this tornado warning. If you happen to be in those cities, maybe you live along Interstate 80. I think that's a very popular interstate there in Iowa. Just something to be aware of. There is also a severe thunderstorm warning just to the north of your region in that area. But I'm not really seeing... I can see some velocity, but it's coming over the lake there. So that might be potentially why we don't see, at least with the latest scan of it, at least a velocity signature being tight over that area. Now, if we look at the severe thunderstorm warning to the north of this region, and I know a lot of you guys are watching this from Iowa, so I'm really trying to keep track of what's going on here. We're seeing a severe thunderstorm warning. Now, they're warning this for ping-pong-sized hail in 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. All of these severe thunderstorm warnings essentially are being warned for this. So that's something to take precaution of. This may make way for damage in this area. Don't be outdoors when the storm is rolling through. You want to be safe inside. Again, this is on the northeastern side of Des Moines, and just to the west of it, we have several severe thunderstorm warnings. Now, like Matthew was saying, this is now starting to become a line of storms. Now, with what concerns us with this line of storms is this may bring in some of those damaging wind gusts. I can see a little bit of outflow also from the storms just to the, I would say, east of Creston. See a little bit of outflow. So that's telling me that these are starting to pack a punch, at least in terms of wind coming into that region. And of course, we're still tracking this tornado warning in Iowa. So let me switch the radar here. And let's turn on some of these chaser feeds. Let's see what's going on in the ground. And so Corey, still pretty dark sky. Looks like a lot of rain. If there's anything in there, it might be rain wrapped. A lot of, ooh, I just turned that off when he got a good lightning strike there. A lot of lightning with this too. Of course, ooh, now that was impressive. Yeah, so when you see this, a lot of electrical activity, you want to stay indoors. Lightning can also pose a danger in this region, especially with these storms. This is also that tornado warning. You want to be indoors, you need to be seeking shelter. Right now, I'm not seeing anything on the ground. Let's see if the National Weather Service has updated these tornado warnings. And yeah, so looks like this one, they've now issued a PDS tornado warning. This is a life-threatening situation. So let's turn on that velocity layer here. And yeah, so there is the tightening of that storm. And let's put on that debris tracker. So it might actually be picking up a little bit of debris. And so I'm not surprised that they've issued a PDS tornado warning with the storm. What does this mean? It means this is a particularly dangerous situation. This is a life-threatening situation. If you're under this tornado warning, so we're talking about you guys in Lewistown, Bryant, St. David, Goofy Ridge, and Topeka. This is along, looks like Interstate 24 in Illinois. About 4,000 of you, closer to 5,000, are under this PDS tornado warning. You need to be seeking shelter immediately. This is a pretty dangerous storm that's coming into this region. And just from what I'm seeing on the storm chaser layer here, this may be rain wraps. It might be something hard to see there, especially as it's getting dark in this region. So definitely be in your tornado shelter. Go into the most interior portion of your home, away from exterior walls and windows. This is a dangerous situation in Illinois. And so let's see if I can put a tracker on here. If we go to WSI, so we can track out the storm. And so this storm in particular, let's see what the speed is of this storm. So this is a tornado warning. This is moving at, see if I can find that, 50 miles per hour. So I do want to put a tracker on here so we can see where this storm is going down the line. And I want to put, see if we can get velocity on this. Oh, do not want that. So I don't think I have this radar on, but you can kind of see where the center of the storm is on this. So that's the newest the newest radar scan, and I have to turn on the radar from Illinois there. But let's put a tracker and show you the timing of when this dangerous storm will get into your region. So let's go here, and this is moving at 50. So I always like to do these long trackers. So, you know, this is heading right over Lewistown, and we'll kind of extend it out into the polygon here. And so if you're down the line from here, so we're talking about Little America, it'll arrive in your area at around 7:41 p.m. Bryant, just a little bit before that at 7:36 p.m. Definitely seeking shelter again. This is 5,000 of you guys under this PDS tornado warning in Illinois. A pretty dangerous situation. And you can definitely see debris here on the radar from our debris tracker using the MyRadar app. And then from velocity, this is a very quickly tightening storm. Let's see if we can pull up Corey Eaton. He's right on the storm. I'm not really noticing anything here, at least on camera. But again, this is a confirmed tornado on the ground. It is making way for damage. Not sure if he's hearing tornado sirens there, but this is a dangerous storm. Again, this is in Illinois, and he think he's driving through, let's see, Lewistown. So he's going to be, you know, he's on the south side of Lewistown. So if there's a tornado on the ground, we'll have to see what, I think he's coming in from the south of the storm. We're kind of losing his visuals there, but definitely a lot of rain coming in, windy. But right now, from his view, I'm not seeing the tornado on the ground, but it is there. You need to be seeking shelter if you're in this area. Again, this is a PDS tornado warning. Okay, so somebody asking about the Illinois tornado. And let me, so the National Weather Service is doing a great job updating this tornado in Illinois. Again, a damaging tornado. But so far with the, I think, Iowa tornado, they still had it, at least as of 15 minutes ago, it was still observed. Let's see here. let's go back to that one. So if you guys are concerned about that storm in Iowa, we can put a tracker on it too. And we'll kind of keep the app up here because I really want to keep my eye on this PDS tornado warning. It's coming close to the Illinois River there and Quiver Lake. So if you live on the western side of that, that's dangerous storm is right over you. But it's coming right over Lewistown here. And Damien, I don't know if we can kind of keep that on the corner. Looks like we just lost Corey's stream there, and he was right over Lewistown, so I hope he's in a safe zone seeking shelter, or at least a good distance away from this really, really dangerous storm. But let's go back. I zoomed out a little bit too far. And I think we still have this observed tornado here in Iowa, since a lot of people tonight are watching us from Iowa. So hopefully staying safe in that region. So not really seeing, so it looks like they did extend now that tornado warning with a severe thunderstorm warning, which is some good news. That means the tornado possibly lifted and they don't see a danger, at least down the line, with that severe thunderstorm warning. So I really want to focus in on this storm down here, Matt. This is a PDS tornado warning in Illinois. About 5,000 people are under this life-threatening situation.
Yeah, most definitely. And one of my concerns, too, is that this overarching storm is heading in the direction of Peoria down the road. The city is now under a severe thunderstorm warning. The bigger concern, as Erica said, is that tornado warning. And it's a PDS, or a particularly dangerous situation tornado warning. Again, the environment is primed for higher-end tornadoes today. They can quickly become significant, as we saw in the case of Iowa earlier on. That just became a quick drill bit tornado, even though it was kind of outrunning the instability or juice. That's how much shear or spin there is, especially near the warm front. And these things are near the warm front, so it's literally ingesting streamwise vorticity or horizontal spin, tilting that into the vertical, gobbling that up, and really overachieving. So right now we're watching this storm southwest of Peoria. And let me know, hopefully we have my, if we can switch out and take my Mac Mini full, that'd be great, please, Damien. So we're showing folks this tornado warning in Illinois. It is that PDS tornado warning. The tornado is now right over, it looks like, a little bit tough to read this, but Bryant, I believe, northeast of Lewistown. We take a look at the structure. It is a textbook tornado warning. You can see the red box right there. Obviously, the purple, that's hailed to about golf ball, almost probably hen egg size. This is the forward flank downdraft, air coming down with rain and hail. Here's the inflow notch, just kind of a little bump in where warm, moist air is rushing in to fuel the circulation, and there's no rain there. Then on the backside, the rear flank downdraft, the cool air wraparound, is right here. It even kind of kicks up some additional precipitation right here. So I'd say 60+ mile per hour winds along this little front right here from the RFD. But then right in here at the apex of this notch, that's where that potential and likely tornado is. It is confirmed on the ground. It is a damaging large tornado northwest of Quiver Lake. So again, if you're in that area, you need to seek shelter now. Lowest floor of whatever building you're in and avoiding windows. If you're in a mobile home vehicle outdoors, you want to get to a site-built location and protect yourself from flying debris. But again, everybody in that area needs to be in shelter, trying to put as many layers between yourself and the outside world as you possibly can. So again, it's over a rather rural area between Lewistown and it looks like Little America right now, northwest of Liverpool. So it's over kind of some rural intersections. Still folks along North Grain Bin Highway, North Bertha Road, North Bethel Road. You guys all have to be in shelter. Again, it's a very sparsely populated area, but eventually it will be moving in the direction of Maples Mill. So Maples Mill, this is your early warning to seek shelter, lowest floor of whatever building you're in, avoiding windows. The town has a small Methodist church right along the intersection of 78 and 8. That's likely where the circulation will cross in the next little while or so. So again, you have a few minutes. If you're in that area, you want to get to a site-built location, protect yourself from flying debris. Maybe you have a few extra minutes, run and grab a blanket, pillows, whatever you can do to protect your head from debris that may be flying with this tornado. Again, most tornado casualties stem from head injuries. So you want to make sure that you're trying to mitigate risk as best you possibly can. So again, anyone in that area, you have to be in shelter, putting as many layers between yourself and the outside world as you possibly can. We'll switch over to velocity motion. What's going on inside the storm? Green is towards the radar, red is away. Right near Bryant, an obvious, very strong tornado, just about a mile west of the town of Bryant. Again, folks, you really need to be watching this quite closely. Bryant's Boondocks, the U Stewart, First Street, the Howarth Street, Baxter Street, Stanley Street, Main Street, Hassan Street. Everybody in the town of Bryant, you hopefully are in your shelter right now. If not, the tornado is almost directly upon you. It will soon be heading in the direction of, it looks like, Dunfermline or Dunfermline line. So again, right along the railroad tracks, this thing is moving north and east. St. David as well. St. David and Dunfermline line. Yes, Dunfermline line, the Buckhead Fire Department area, the Safe Harbor Storage, 40 acres ballpark. Betty Wright's Bank Bar and Grill. You guys all have to be in shelter right now. Drops of Golden Honey. Y'all got to be in shelter. The website designers in St. David. Everybody in the town of St. David and Dunfermline. Right along the railroad tracks, right along where Highway 100 meets 78, south from Skyrocket Tap. You have to be in shelter right now. Lowest floor, again, of any building you can possibly be in that is site built, and protect yourself from flying debris. That is a very prominent radar signature right there. So again, that's what we are watching at this point. And let's switch back over to our velocity tracker. We see that right there. We'll switch over to correlation coefficient, see if we can find any shapes of anything irregular. And indeed, it's a messy signature, but this blue right here may be commensurate with irregular shapes. Not rain, not hail, but spiky, jagged things in the atmosphere that do look to be perhaps tornadic in nature. So this may be debris being launched into the atmosphere. So again, that is what we were watching at this point. I'll zoom out a little bit for you. And again, it looks like a bucket of spilled paint, but just know this blue right near my cursor, that is potentially debris being lofted into the atmosphere by this tornado. It's a decently tall storm too, about 55, 60,000 feet. We switch back over to our reflectivity. You can see this tornado is likely right in this area right here between Bryant and Dunfermline, moving east-northeast. So again, folks have to be in their safe place, lowest floor of whatever building you're in, and avoiding windows. Now, it's near just north of Bryant. I mean, it may be just barely missing Bryant by half a mile, if that, right over Big Creek. I don't think St. David will be as lucky. St. David in particular, you have to be in shelter right now. The best thing you can do is put as many layers between yourself and the outside world as you possibly can. And again, just like you bundle up in the wintertime by putting on layers, same thing with tornadoes. You want to get as low as you can and put layers between yourself and the outside world as you possibly can as that circulation moves east-northeast at close to 40 plus miles per hour. That tornado warning now has been extended farther north in direction of Canton and even north. So the tornado warning has been extended north. It is considered a large and extremely dangerous tornado over St. David, heading towards Canton. It is a particularly dangerous situation, tornado warning. At 7:25 Central Time, this tornado is reported near northwest of Lewistown. The Weather Service is calling this a life-threatening situation. Again, this tornado warning in effect for Fulton, Tazewell, and Peoria counties in central Illinois. It is moving in the general direction of Peoria down the road. Again, we still have about an hour's time or a little bit less before it gets to Peoria. But folks, anywhere between St. David and Canton along South 5th Avenue, Highway 78, Dunfermline, y'all got to be in shelter right now. Spoon River College, you have to be in shelter too. Folks along Highway 22, County Road 22, it looks like the North New Bridge Road, everybody has to be in shelter. Lowest floor of whatever building right in, avoiding windows. A lot of outbuildings there, a lot of rural areas, but it is imperative folks seek shelter. Let's very briefly, as we have that kind of covered right now, let's very briefly check up and see what's going on over in Iowa with our formerly tornado warned storm. It looks to me that tornado warning has been dropped for that part of Iowa. Des Moines is now under a severe thunderstorm warning. We'll very briefly look over to Des Moines and kind of see what's going on there. They're dealing with a lot, but the main concern is with that tornado warning in parts of Illinois. Again, the good news, and we're going to take a look at the Des Moines radar right now, we are not seeing any tornadic thunderstorms. We are seeing, obviously, the remnants of one, the one that produced a tornado southwest of Pella earlier on near Knoxville, Melcher Davis. This produced a big tornado, a drill bit tornado, likely probably had winds 140, 150 miles an hour. But now this storm is still hooking. It is still under tornado watch, but the tornado warning has expired because I do believe it is being a sort of kind of going up and over a boundary, kind of leaving the warm front, leaving the warm moist air, heading into an area where there's cooler air near the surface, mitigating that tornado threat. But still large hail to about, I'd say, $50, perhaps golf ball size is likely with that storm. We have a new severe thunderstorm warning for Des Moines. This is with that line of storms. So again, we are watching that line very closely as it works through the area. It will be in the next, let's say, half hour to 45 minutes or less in Des Moines. And there are some kind of hooking appendages. So it wants to tornado. I don't think it will. And again, we're kind of looking at that semi-organized line getting going. Lines are sort of good for our purposes. They have a better damaging straight line wind risk, but a lesser risk overall of tornadoes. So we're watching that closely. The main action, though, is with this PDS, particularly dangerous situation, severe thunderstorm warning again. We'll take a look at the Lincoln, Illinois radar as that thing works off to the north. Big concern there is, of course, for hail, too, on the north side, pushing towards Highway 24. but ultimately this tornado is likely over Dunfermline line. So again, if you're in Dunfermline line, you got to seek shelter now, putting as many layers between yourself and the outside world as you possibly can. Very obvious couplet right here. So again, it's passing near or just north of Dunfermline. I think areas right along Highway 100 need to be in shelter. Eventually pushing towards Highway 78 as well. So again, anyone between Canton, Dunfermline, and even south towards Maples Mill, you want to be in your shelter if at all possible. Lowest floor of whatever building you're in and avoiding windows. Like we said, put as many layers between yourself and the outside world as you can. Erica, I know there's a lot going on, and there's a lot to track. We're very fortunate that only one tornado warning is in effect. I do wish I was in Iowa covering out there, as I'm sure everyone can imagine. But we're doing our best to bring you great data from the studio. Erica and I are going to be watching this around the clock. In the meantime, Erica, what are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, so, I was here just looking around Twitter and, there's so much footage of the tornadoes on the ground, which is some good news with this because there's so many people, keeping their eye on the storm. We are able to tell you guys if there's something on the ground. Now, when you're under a tornado warning, it's very important to put, like Capucci was saying, Matt was saying, put as many walls between you and the outside. It's very important. Like, for instance, this Illinois tornado, we know it's on the ground. If you live in this area, seeking shelter, but also maybe covering yourself with a helmet, maybe even a mattress, even blankets would help because you want to protect yourself and your family. And that's something I want to reiterate with this tornado warning. Again, this is a particularly dangerous situation, tornado warning. And this is just essentially telling you guys that this is something that you need to take seriously. This is a tornado on the ground and it is capable or it's already producing damage. So we're definitely seeing that here with the latest scan. And of course, down the line, Peoria, you're already under a severe thunderstorm warning. And this is for that same storm that could possibly also bring 2-inch hail into a very populated area and 60-mile-per-hour winds. So I know we've been talking about Peoria. We were giving you warnings ahead of time, and the National Weather Service went ahead and issued this severe thunderstorm warning for this region. But we're still watching this PDS tornado warning. And right now, at least, there's 2 areas that we're really watching for concern of this. We can see that the velocity is there. I'm not seeing it as tight of a scan as I was seeing earlier, but this is something still of concern. So let me try to get some of the latest information from the National Weather Service here with this tornado warning, because I know there is a lot of chatter, a lot of concern with this particular storm that's coming into areas of Illinois. So as of a couple of minutes ago, it's still a PDS tornado warning. So this is coming into regions of Bryant, St. David, Canton, Banner, and Glassford. About 18,000 of you live under this tornado warning. So that's very concerning. This is coming into an area that's very populated, and we're going to have to wait and see if the National Weather Service actually extends this tornado warning down the line. They're pretty good at extending this and giving you a good lead time on when the storm could be in your area. You'll have about 15 minutes to be prepared if you are to be under a tornado warning. Now, some of you guys have been under this tornado warning for several minutes now, so you need to be in your tornado safe place, in your shelter, because this storm is on the ground and it's dangerous. And I'm just kind of looking on social media right now. If you see me looking on the side of my screen, just to see if there's any footage. I'm not really seeing very much. It is pretty dark there now. Sunset is occurring now, but if you see from Corey's feed here, it looks like there's some downed power lines from his feed. A lot of emergency vehicles coming into this zone, but it's in and out. You can definitely see some of the dark clouds there in the background as he's driving on through this region, but he's right on the storm. I'm not seeing anything so far on his feed. I think he's going into an area that doesn't have good signal. We also have John Humphreys. And again, these storm chaser feeds are courtesy of Severe Studios within the app, the MyRadar app. Now, John Humphreys is just to the east. It looks like it's coming to be very dark in that area. So they're a couple miles apart, but you can definitely tell the difference between Corey's live shot and even Humphreys. So it's getting a little bit darker where Corey is, and he is near Peoria. They're just on the east side of Peoria, and there's Corey's live shot. Yeah, you can definitely see some down power lines. Hope he's staying safe there. Looks like the tornado might have just passed through the area. But so far right now, at least from the latest reports of the National Weather Service, I haven't seen any latest updates from the storm. So I'm assuming it's still on the ground and still making way for damage. And we could definitely see that here with the latest scan. So let's go back to our debris tracker. I like to show this a lot because at least in a meteorological perspective, it lets us know if there's something still on the ground being lofted. It might be some debris maybe in the atmosphere here, but I'm not seeing any tight indication of the velocity, the latest velocity scan here. And I have that closer radar on here. So hopefully that means the storm is weakening. We haven't had an update for about 10 minutes from the National Weather Service, so I'm hoping with the next update that they're about to issue here that things are looking good for this region. But either way, under tornado warning, you need to be seeking shelter, and this dangerous storm is coming into Peoria and eventually onto the east side. It's going to go right over the Peoria Lake there in Illinois, so that's something I want to make you guys aware of. So yes, so it looks like the latest update now, just as of a minute ago, they have taken off that PDS tag with this tornado warning. So that's some good news. Looks like the tornado may have just lifted in this area, but it's still a tornado warning. So that doesn't mean that you're out in the clear just yet. And again, this is a tornado warning for St. David, Canton, Banner, and even Glassford there in Illinois. So that is definitely some good news for anybody who's worried about that, but you still need to be seeking shelter at least over the next several minutes here. And it's getting dark there, so that's my concern over this region, is that we're not going to have very good visuals of if there is a storm on the ground or a tornado making way for damage. It's going to be very difficult to see this, especially heading into the overnight hours. But at least as of for now, the PDS tag has been removed, but there is still a tornado warning. They have extended this tornado warning just to the west of Peoria. So Peoria, you're right on that corner. If you live in that region, just stay prepared, stay vigilant. You may be warned here over the next several minutes, but they went ahead and issued this. So you have about 15 minutes to prepare. So if you're anywhere from Norwood, I would say, Perkin, South Perkin, and even Glassford, you need to be in your tornado shelter. This warning goes until at least 8:15 p.m. Central Time. So you have about another, I would say maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes on this tornado warning coming into regions of Illinois. But so far right now, at least from what we're seeing with our chaser feeds, I'm not seeing very much, at least imagery. But I mean, it definitely looks scary in that region. And so you should be in your tornado shelter, especially over this area. A lot of lightning coming with this storm as well. It's probably pretty loud over this region. And Owen, of course, completely dark. The only thing that's illuminating sky is those lightning strikes. So we're getting into the evening hours here, and where it's completely dark over this region.
Erica, one of the things I think is worth mentioning too is that oftentimes when we see a lightning spike like this, when we see a sudden uptick in the amount of cloud-to-ground lightning, that's usually a telltale sign that a storm is intensifying and can produce a tornado. So again, we've seen several cycles with this storm already. And the fact that the National Weather Service is issuing such a large tornado warning, to me, says there's a good chance, they're very confident this thing will produce a tornado if it hasn't already. So again, the fact that it extends into the city of Peoria now, or at least southwestern parts of the Peoria metro, is definitely something we are concerned about. If we take the map mini right now, you can see kind of what's going on with this storm. Again, it is soon to cross the Mud Lake and the Illinois River, which is kind of a big area there. And I think once it does so, it will start inching closer to the city of Peoria, which right now is seeing light rain in the city, but eventually we'll see light to moderate hail likely in the next little while as well. So we take a look at the map mini, and that's what you're seeing right now. You can see a couple of things. Number one, obvious hook echo. This whole thing is spinning counterclockwise. The whole thing is rotating. That's kind of a telltale sign showing exactly what's going on. As the storm grows taller, it is feeling jet stream winds higher aloft in the atmosphere, and resultantly is starting to kind of spin. There's a change of wind speed and direction of height known as wind shear that has caused anything that spans high enough to begin to rotate. As we wait for new radar scans to load, you can see exactly where that red box is. This tornado warning covers much of the Highway 24 corridor. The signatures are getting a little tighter at this point. And we're also worried about hail up to about 2 inches in diameter. So again, this thing, the center of circulation right now, where that tornado or potential tornado would be located, about 7 miles east of St. David or 8 miles southeast of Canton, moving east at 40 miles per hour. This thing goes to about 8:15 p.m. So right here, this is the inflow notch. This is where warm, moist air is rushing in to fuel the storm. Up here, you have rain, hail to perhaps 2 inches in diameter, so bigger than a golf ball, which is of concern. But ultimately, this whole area is where that potential tornado would be. A little bit southwest, it looks like Banner, right along Highway 24. So let's see where Banner is on my map right now. This is a little bit east of Lewistown. everybody in the red box, you want to put as many layers between yourself and the outside world as you possibly can. But Banner is kind of where ground zero, that center circulation is, that very obvious spin is right now, just south of Banner. Soon to cross right near, looks like the Emcon Preserve, near Little America, near Liverpool, a little bit north of Liverpool, near the Rice Lake State Fish and Wildlife Area. So if you're familiar with that area, that's where this storm, the potential tornado would be. It's moving towards the Illinois River, and then eventually we'll start hitting areas like, for example, Talbot, Parkland, Manitou, Midway, South Perkin, Green Valley. So you guys are next in line. So it's soon to cross the Illinois River, but I do think next in line, Talbot, Parkland, Manitou, Midway, and South Perkin are in that zone. And again, we're seeing very obvious spin on radar, that counterclockwise rotation. Manifesting in this hook echo, the potential tornado would be right at the apex of that hook. Let's switch over to velocity mode. So you can see winds heading towards and away from the radar. Green is towards, red is away. When you see two colors over a short distance, as we'll load in just a moment, the inference is, of course, rotation. Hey, no eating my shoe. To clarify, I'm talking to a dog, not a person. So I am dog sitting for one of the meteorologists in town, and he has discovered that if I don't give enough attention, he is eating a shoe. So more pressing matters right now, Forrest, is that there's a potential tornado near the town of Banner. So again, folks in the area have to be in shelter right now. Highway 24, and here's the thing. If you're in Banner, you're probably thinking, it's not too bad that the rain stopped. You're in the inflow notch. You're right near where that tornado would be. Oftentimes in scenarios like this, say the hook is moving this way, okay? You might be right here. You might be wondering, there's no rain, there's no hail, the thunder and lightning's off to your north. You might think you're in the clear. Oh no, the hook comes in, it gets you right afterwards. And so you might be kind of right here. The hook's moving like this. Eventually that tornado gets it, even if it's not raining. So that's why folks, even like South Perkin, where it's not raining right now, have to be in their tornado safe places, south of 24. Mapleton, it looks like London Mines, Houston Mines rather, Glassford, everybody has to be in shelter. But really, in the whole red box, this is a concerning storm. And Erica, with the environment we have today, there's no reason to think this will weaken anytime soon. The atmosphere is locked and loaded and primed, and I think could very easily persist into the next little while with this storm. There's not really a limiting factor that I can see anytime soon with this, as it inches ever closer to the city of Peoria. We're very fortunate that right now, overall, what we're seeing, the storms in Iowa, as you can see, yellow boxes, no red boxes, no tornado warnings right now. The main concern is this one lone storm in Illinois. I want to look and see if you can see any debris on there by putting on what we call the correlation coefficient. What that does is peer into the storm to look for different shapes. Anything red is kind of a normal shape, anything blue is an irregular shape. We don't see very concentrated lobe of blue, in other words, no clear pocket, which to me says that we're not seeing a debris signature yet. But that said, this is over kind of a rural area, so we're watching that very closely. Forrest, what did you drop? He pushed something under the coffee table.
Hey, Matt, so I want to draw your attention to John Humphrey's stream right now. He has a pretty decent image of that storm that you're talking about. Like you said, a lot of lightning. So what it looks like, there is some pretty decent structure. The lightning doing a very good job of illuminating the storm. And it's no surprise that they're keeping this tornado warning with this storm. Again, this is for that tornado warning, our only tornado warning in Illinois. But either way, you're going to see a lot of the imagery of the storms from this region, because in this area, look at that. A lot of lightning. Looks like at least now it's cloud to cloud lightning. I'm not seeing any strikes, at least on the ground, or maybe that recent one as I was talking might have been cloud to ground. But
a sparky storm.
Yeah, and I mean, look at that structure. I could watch this all evening long. John Humphreys has a really good view. I want to see where he is exactly, and I think this was his stream. I think I zoomed in a little too much there. Damien, I don't know if we can pull that up full screen. John Humphreys. So he's actually in, I think it's a very small town. It's south of Perkin. He's close to the Perkin Municipal Airport. He's just, I think, maybe a mile or two, a couple blocks away from this, but he's in a good spot. He's right on the other side of the river there. But, I think he has the best image of this tornado warned storm right now. And check in on Owen really quickly. Of course, his shot is a little too dark, but I want to keep it on here. And I think Damien has it there full screen while I read the latest update on this tornado warning. And if you follow us on social media on the MyRadar, I've been trying to share a lot of the earlier footage of the tornadoes that were in Iowa as it was daylight. Now it's completely dark, so it's going to be really hard to see it. But right now, at least, this is that tornado warning that continues for Perkin, Illinois, Canton, Barton until 8:15. So we're getting on that. You have at least another 20 minutes on this tornado warning.
Yeah, and obviously we're seeing a ton of lightning out there, and lightning is oftentimes a precursor to a tornado genesis, because whenever we see a lightning spike, a big uptick in the amount of cloud-to-ground lightning, or even cloud-to-cloud lightning, that's usually a sign that a potential tornado is on the way. Obviously, this whole area under a tornado warning right now towards Pekin, Hollis, Marquette Heights, Bellevue. The area of Glassford and Kingston Mines is kind of next in line for this potential tornado. They're in the most dire part of the storm. Kingston Mines actually not even seeing rain right now. They're on the fringe of it. They're in the inflow notch, but that just means they're about to get that potential tornadic circulation. Let's go back to the radar real quick if we can, because we've got a new update, and it shows us where Kingston Mines is. It's right on the Illinois River. And again, I'm on the Mac Mini. If you can switch on over, Damien, real quick to where the Mac Mini is. And you can see Kingston Mines is right here. And again, it's right on the fringe of the precipitation. So what you're seeing is this is where warm, moist air is rushing in to fuel the circulation. And then right here, this is where that potential tornado would be, kind of in the inflow notch, right where that rear flame downdraft or the cool air wraparound on the backside of the circulation comes in to tighten that spin. Kind of both air masses meet right here. So that's where that potential tornado would be, actually right near or just northwest of, looks like, Highway 24 west of Glassford. So again, that is moving northeast at about, I want to say, 40-ish miles per hour. Glassford and Kingston Mines, you guys are next in line for this area of intense spin. Mapleton as well. Folks along Highway 24, State Road 25, 74, 75 as well. Robertson's Used Auto Parts, CNC Fireworks, the Butler Haynes Park. Y'all are next in line, a little bit northeast of the Dollar General. So really, you kind of need to take immediate tornado precautions. We switch on over to velocity, and again, we can kind of see where that couplet of spin is, the red against green. Green, of course, wins towards the radar, red is away. When you see both over a very short distance, the inference is, of course, there is strong rotation with that. So again, we're watching that very closely, but ultimately, the red against green, kind of messy right now, but there's that obvious hook on reflectivity mode, which is telling us this is such a concern. And I'm noticing a lot more purple in here too, which to me says the hail size might be increasing a little bit now to about 2 inches in diameter. So probably the size of perhaps, I'd say, golf balls, maybe larger to the size of limes. Ultimately, Hollis, Tuscarora, North Pekin, Pekin, North 8th Street, Highway 29, Ray Denson Chevrolet, QB's Motor Mall, the AMC Classic Pekin 14. Are kind of next in line for this. It's soon to cross into sort of the southwest suburbs of Peoria, which is why we're growing increasingly concerned that this storm is sort of, showing signs of affecting a more populous area. The only thing we can do is kind of hope, I don't even want to hope this, but it makes it more of a right turn. If that's the case, it'll move over a less populous area. But when a storm makes a right turn, the wind field it encounters, and kind of the wind dynamics it behaves with, oftentimes allow it to intensify. So either it stays in its current course and affects a more populous area like North Pekin, or it right turns and goes more towards Pekin and towards Kroger there, and eventually towards Town Oaks. And hey, shh, quiet. Sorry, checking the phone again. And eventually will sort of intensify too. So really not a great situation with this. We don't have confirmation of a tornado on the ground right now, but ultimately, Erica, it's dark. It's very difficult to confirm a tornado unless we're doing it with radar. And until a tornado hits something, we can't confirm it at night with radar. So that's why we say, this may not be a PDS warning. This may not be, one of those big, scary label warnings. It's a tornado warning. You got to take it seriously. Tornado warning is kind of the most dire type of alert we can issue. It means there's immediate threat to life or property with this potential tornado. And you have to treat hey, that's not for you to eat. You have to essentially treat everything as a tornado on the ground at night, because ultimately we have no way of knowing if that is or isn't the case. What I will say is this whole thing, you have to really carefully watch. Mapleton and Kingston Mines are in the inflow notch right now. What that means is that the rain is not falling. That's where the warm, moist air is rushing in to fuel the storm. But they're in the same area that's about to get this kind of hook in the backside. And so they might be lulled to a false sense of security. If you're right along Highway 24 in Kingston Mines, Mapleton, Glassford over towards Butler Haynes Park, that is not a good sign at all. The rain has stopped. The wind has gone calm briefly, time and time and time again. People think the storm is over. It's not. They're just about to get this hook echo on the backside. And here's the thing, even if there's not a tornado lurking over Glassford, which there may be, there may not be, who knows? Even if there's not, there very well could be 60 plus mile per hour winds along this little appendage right here. We call it the rear flank downdraft, the cool air wraparound. And so ultimately, you're either going to get strong, locally damaging straight line winds or a tornado. And we have no way of knowing which it'll be until it actually happens. And so ultimately, this is a disconcerting radar shot. It is moving into a highly populous area. The atmosphere is primed for it to continue surviving today. Overall, though, if we zoom out even more, it looks like, Erica, we have a new tornado warning along Interstate 80 in far eastern Iowa. Between
I was about to say, Matt. That's an observed tornado as of 2 minutes ago from the National Weather Service. This is for Brooklyn, Malcolm, Hartwick, and I think that's Ewart. Iowa, I should say, until 8:30 p.m. CDT. So we don't really have any good chaser feed coming from that area. I would imagine you can't see anything anyways, since it's dark, completely dark in that region. But the National Weather Service has labeled this as an observed tornado. I was looking at some of the latest radar scans here, not showing anything too impressive there, but I am seeing an indication that it is rotating.
I'm sort of surprised. It looks like they drew the polygon on either the fringe of where the storm is going to pass, or my guess is a lot of these are kind of losing their moisture. As they sort out. I think they're close to the boundary, so they're inhaling that twist, the streamwise vorticity along the boundary, but are also not keeping a ton of their preset. My guess, Erica, if I had to guess, because they're saying confirmed tornado. I mean, they issued it with the confirmed tornado, so they didn't see spin on radar either. We're not seeing impressive spin, but my guess, if there was a tornado, it would probably be right here in this little sort of, lighter area pixels. We'll see in just a sec. Called the BWER, bounded weak echo region. It's if that's what this is. It's a very messy signature, but this is probably where that potential funnel would be. It's on the southwest side of the storm. There is some.
It might be it might be in a region too where maybe radar, I see that it's kind of in between radar areas or radars here, as it's in, what is that, central southwestern Iowa, maybe. So maybe that's why we're not seeing.
No man's land.
But either way, it's an observed tornado. About 3,000 people are under this tornado warning.
Yeah, and right now it looks to be right along the, it looks like an exit 63 on Interstate 80. That's a Malcolm exit, and that's a small town. There's about 270 people. It's in Coshowood County, but still, you want to make sure that you are in shelter right now. The Poorhouse Bar and Grill, the Methodist Church there, Natural Resources Conservation, Doughty Angus Cattle Company, Dayton Meat Products, and everybody there and along the railroad tracks too. Dayton, and rather Malcolm, is directly beneath this circulation. That's where the tornado is right now. Emergency management has confirmed this, again, 6 miles northwest of Montezuma, directly over Malcolm. This thing is moving northeast at 50 miles per hour. And Erica, the circulation looks to be getting a little bit better. But here's one cool thing. If we switch back to MyRadar on the Mac Mini real quick, we can see what we call kind of the Screaming V, or the Screaming Eagle signature. It'll take just a sec to load, but we're looking on reflectivity. And my guess, don't fail me now. Come on, reflectivity. I'll zoom out and zoom in. Sometimes you have to do that. It only fails when I don't say the magic words. Anyway, so Erica, you kind of see this weird lessening of the intensity of the colors right here. Folks at home know that the red is the heaviest rain, the purple's the hail, but we're seeing kind of a drop off of heavy rain on the northeastern side. My guess is that this storm has such an intense upward motion in the updraft, so much oomph upstairs in the updraft, so that the air at the top of the storm is literally going up, punching up, kind of bubbling back down, and where it kind of comes back down, the rain sort of bifurcates around, we call that overshooting top. So the overshooting top at the top of the storm, where all the air is going up, goes higher than it otherwise should from a density standpoint, kind of comes back down, and basically the jet stream winds bifurcate, split around that, and take the precipitation with it. So really, it is a very powerful overshooting top, that place where the momentum from all the upward motion penetrates the tropopause, the ceiling of the lower atmosphere, takes that momentum and takes that sort of air higher than it otherwise should go, kind of like a bubble going up, and then comes back down, but splits the jet stream around it. And that's why you're seeing that split right here in the heaviest rain. Very cool stuff there. But folks in Malcolm need to be in their tornado safe place right now. Erica?
Yeah, Matt. Definitely, with this evening, we were expecting tornado warnings, although, compared to last week, is not as, at least I would say, at least quantity wise, there weren't as many tornado warnings, but every single tornado warning that has been issued today has had a confirmed tornado with them, at least since we started the live stream. So that's something I want you guys to keep in mind. If you are under a tornado warning, you definitely need to be seeking shelter. We have not seen a tornado warning yet where they didn't produce a tornado. And even with now that it's nightfall, even with this one in Iowa, this is an observed tornado on the ground. So something to keep in mind, especially into the next several hours, as these storms are really coming in strong. And something else I want to point out too is we have a line of severe thunderstorm warnings now coming into Topeka, Kansas. I saw some of your comments here. Some of you guys are concerned about these storms coming into Kansas. And so pointing these storms out, these are all capable of producing some pretty strong wind gusts, but also hail. And at least with the one over Topeka, Kansas right now, 60-mile-per-hour wind gust and quarter-sized hail. So that's really our primary concern with the storms that are going to come into Kansas City, is those straight line winds that may cause damage and even some hail. Our concern really mostly is for these two tornado warnings now coming in closer to Peoria. If we change gears here a little bit, and let me switch the radar. So we're using the MyRadar app here. And you can see there, we still have this tornado warning in effect. It's coming into Perkin, and this is a pretty interesting radar scan here. And let's take a look at the velocity signature. It's still rotating. Let's see, correlation coefficient, not really seeing. This is our debris tracker, not really seeing anything there, but a definitely interesting radar signature just from the radar reflectivity. And let me see if we got any latest updates from the National Weather Service here about this tornado warning, because I am growing concerned that this is coming into Peoria. Still radar indicated, so nothing is on the ground. Of course, it's dark, so it's going to be really hard to see what's going on there. Storm chaser John Humphreys still seeing a lot of lightning with the storm, so it's a pretty strong storm that's coming into just on the west side of Peoria. So if we were to see something on the ground, I think he'd probably have the best image or the best view of if there's a tornado on the ground, just because of the lightning. So the lightning is definitely helping illuminate the sky, which is some good news. They're on the ground. So if we do see something, we'd know pretty quickly over this region. Again, this is a tornado warning. Now, this is a smaller box, but about 56,000 of you guys live in this tornado warning. That's a huge population, and of course, as it comes into areas of Peoria, that's where our concern mostly lies. This goes until 8:15, so you still got another 9 minutes on the storm. I'm curious to see if the National Weather Service office there will extend this tornado warning into Peoria. So you guys stay on alert. You're under a severe thunderstorm warning, but a tornado warning is a completely different thing. That means you guys be prepared, know where to go if you happen to be under a tornado warning here. Could be at any moment over that area, but we'll see what the National Weather Service does with that tornado. Now let's go back to the one in Iowa here, and we're seeing a lot of activity. I wonder if I can turn on the lightning layer here, because I'm curious to know how much lightning is coming into that region. And if you have the premium version of the app, you can access this as well. I like to change it to show markers, just so it's not flashing at me. But so let's switch it to the Des Moines radar here. And as we wait for this to load, so, the National Weather Service still labeling this as an observed tornado, with about 3,000 of you guys under this tornado warning. But the velocity signature, I'm seeing it there, not too impressive over that region. Let's go back to the reflectivity. And the reflectivity looks a little better than what we're seeing for the velocity here. Debris tracker, maybe a little bit of debris there. That's a little interesting. Yeah, so I mean, I would definitely still be seeking shelter. Again, with this storm too, I wonder if they're going to issue a tornado warning down the line there over the next several minutes. And so it's 8 o'clock for you guys, Central Time, 9 o'clock for us here, Eastern Time. We're in Orlando, Florida. If you're watching us, thank you so much. If you do happen to be watching us on the MyRadar app, you have questions, maybe you're in Iowa or maybe even Illinois and you're concerned about your region, go on YouTube, go on Facebook. I am watching, monitoring the chat. We're trying to answer your questions here. Of course, meteorologist Matthew Capucci can answer any question about weather. Yeah, so don't be afraid to ask us. That's what we're here for. We're keeping you safe throughout the evening. You know, this is an evening where pretty much every single tornado warning has spawned a tornado. And thankfully some of them I'm not seeing too many reports of damage as of right now, but as these tornado warnings are coming into populous areas, that's where I'm getting a little bit more concerned with these storms. And so I'm continuing to watch what the National Weather Service will do with these tornado warnings. So looks like, yeah, so as of a couple minutes ago, they just issued that new tornado warning, now including Peoria. So about 200,000 of you are under this tornado warning. And that was my concern with this storm coming into a huge population, a populated area. And so let's go back to these chaser feeds and see if John Humphreys is catching anything. At least as of right now, this is only radar indicated. But if you live in Peoria, like I mentioned earlier, you need to be in your tornado shelter in the most interior portion of your home. If you have a basement, that is the best area to seek shelter. But this is coming not only into Peoria, so this is going to cross Interstate 74, Morton, Washington, Metamora, Goodfield. You're also under this tornado warning. They're also labeling this for the potential of golf ball sized hail possible with this. So this is a huge population. Not really sure if the tornado sirens are going to go off there, but you need to rely on those alerts if you live in that area and seek shelter immediately. So let's go back to that latest radar scan here. And I know, Matt, you're tracking this storm as well.
Yeah, most definitely. I can hop in whenever. We're just waiting for the radar on my end to load. And, obviously we try to get the radar data to folks as quickly as possible. On rare occasions like this, if there's a tile that looks to be missing out, that just tells us there are a lot of people who really are trying to track this radar at the same time. So here's kind of what's going on. If we zoom out a little bit, you can see in sort of broader detail what's going on in Peoria. Obviously, there's that hook echo right there. Downtown Peoria is sort of the northern portion is in the forward flame downdraft of the air with the rain, the hail, the everything else. And then south of downtown, right near, for example, looks like East Peoria, Craig Coer, North Pekin, eventually towards Highway 474, Interstate 74 on the southeast side of town, near the Dollar General, the Champion Pool Supply, folks along Springfield Road, south of Veterans Park. That's where it's not raining right now. That's where you might think, oh, it's not that bad. You're the inflow notch, okay? This is where air is flowing into the storm, and eventually you get this little kind of appendage on the backside. That's what we're watching right now. So ultimately, that's what I'm kind of concerned about at this point, because this appendage right here, this little ball type thing, that's the tip of the hook echo. That is where there would be that potential tornado if there is one, which we cannot confirm right now. Velocity is getting a little bit messier. Sometimes that happens at night as surface temperature is cool. And so because the surface temperature is cool, the air above is comparatively warmer. That bends the radar beam back towards the ground, and you tend to get a little bit extra of kind of a signal noise and whatnot. But we call that sort of what we call signal ducting. So that makes the signatures messier to find at night. But ultimately, the reflectivity is very clear. The hook is sort of right over 474 right now, right over the Illinois River. That's what we are watching at this point, and that's sort of the concern. So folks in Peoria need to be in shelter. If you're not getting a tornado, which we're hoping you're not, the signatures are kind of weaker right now than they were earlier on. Still impressive, still enough to warrant a tornado warning. But if you're not getting that, you're still getting quite a bit of lightning, heavy rainfall, and also the potential for a hail to perhaps $50 size, maybe a little bit larger. So Erica, it doesn't look as bad as it did earlier on. That said, in today's environment, things can pulse up, pulse down very quickly, and I wouldn't be surprised to get a potential tornado out of that. Let's take a look at the other circulation, the other tornado warning cell right now that just crossed Interstate 80 in central and eastern Iowa between Des Moines and Iowa City, between Des Moines and Cedar Rapids. This thing is it's an obvious circulation on radar, obvious hook echo. The potential tornado would be right here, northeast of Malcolm by about, looks like 6 or 7 miles. We're talking areas like, for example, just one moment, Malcolm, type that in. And one thing I'll point out too, Malcolm has about, I want to say 270 people in town or in Poweshiek County, but folks near Highway 6, Route 63, near and north of Brooklyn, that's a concern for you guys. Again, this tornado warning remains in effect for the next 17 minutes. This was a confirmed tornado as of 7:54 Central Time. So it's been a while since the National Weather Service updated this warning, but that said, you get the idea. Emergency management did confirm a tornado on the ground. If there was a tornado, it'd be right near this hook right here. We'll switch on over to velocity mode real quick. And we're going to see a red against green couplet, I imagine here. It's kind of outrunning the fuel, the juice that can kind of sustain its life as it moves towards a warm front. So yeah, kind of a broad red against green. Again, nighttime is a tough time to sort of see those signatures. I do think that the threat has dissipated for Interstate 80. So 80 is no longer affected by the storm. 80 is down here. Malcolm, you're in the clear. Brooklyn, you're in the clear. You guys are good to go now. We're going to look for debris on radar. I don't see any yet. Remember, we're looking at something called correlation coefficient, which essentially ascertains the shapes of whatever's in the atmosphere. Anytime we see something irregular, jagged, spiky, commensurate with debris, that tends to be blue, and we're not seeing much. Oh, actually, I may have spoke too soon. This may be a debris signature. That blue right there, it's tough to tell. The National Weather Service says as of 8:14 Central Time, it was an indicated tornado. In other words, nothing confirmed right now, but this tornado is located near Hartwick, or about 14 miles southwest of Toledo, moving northeast at 50 miles an hour. So it's moving quickly. It's moving northeast towards Belle Plaine, towards Toledo, Luzerne down the road. If that warning is extended, I'd say in Belle Plaine, you want to be in shelter. This is kind of the track we're looking at. Belle Plaine could be sort of red line, center line for this, but it is something we are definitely monitoring at this point. But 2 tornado warning circulations, both at this point radar indicated, which is good news. Both earlier on had tornadoes simultaneously at the same time, which is of course what simultaneous means. But yeah, let's check in real quick on the Peoria cell. And then Erica, I won't toss back over to you because I need to step out for just about 5 or 6 minutes to take care of the dog. But let's take one more look at the Peoria cell from the Lincoln, Illinois radar, northwest of Bloomington. Again, Peoria, a town of about 200,000 people right along the Illinois River. And again, the signature is not perfect. The hook is obvious, and we don't have confirmation of a tornado right now. Current time is, of course, 8:16 Central Time. The hazards being tornado and a golf ball size hail. Tornado is radar indicated. You would think by now, if there was a tornado on the ground in the city of Peoria, given the population, we would know. So I'm confident saying there probably isn't one on the ground right now based on radar signatures. What is likely, however, is that the Weather Service is maintaining this warning because the circulation is there, the hook echo is there, and one could touch down at any minute. So if you're in the red box, y'all have another about, well, let's say 14 minutes where you want to be in shelter, putting as many layers between yourself and the outside world as you can. It's not the end of the world. 14 minutes. Suck it up. Go down to your basement, go down to your hidey hole, do whatever you have to do, and take a board game down if you have to. Watch us in your stream. Watch Family Feud. Take some snacks. I don't know. But get down to your safe spot ASAP. Bring a blanket or pillow with you just to cover your head, just in case. If you hear loud rushing noise, if you hear a freight train or anything like that, that means a tornado may be nearby, and you want to put that over your head to protect yourself from head injuries, because most tornado casualties stem from head injuries. Again, we look at velocity, not a super clear-cut signature, but ultimately reflectivity does show that hook. And Erica, with that, I'm going to toss over to you. I got to step out for just a moment. Lastly, I'll peek real quick at correlation coefficient. Oh.
Yeah, so that's some good news, at least with that storm. I'm not seeing any reports on social media, any footage of what's going on there. Yeah, and I mean, from the latest scan, I mean, there's not a clear indication that, there's something on the ground, but it's interesting. It's coming over the Peoria Lake. So it looks like they just canceled the tornado warning on that storm. So, I guess the National Weather Service wasn't seeing anything, which is some good news. But I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in. A lot of you guys are watching us from Illinois. There's a lot of concern about what's going to happen heading into the next several hours. So let's show you that. Let's show you the future radar. And I know there's a lot of concern. There's been several tornadoes reported in Iowa and even Illinois. So let's zoom in. into this region. And future casts, again, I want to reiterate this. This is not going to be a perfect, this is not exactly what the radar is going to look like at the time, especially because it's not even picking up on some of these storms that were in this area. But take a look at that. I think what you guys should be concerned about heading into the next several hours. So I was getting some from Bloomington, question what's going to happen in Bloomington later on. And something about a city in Ottawa, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Illinois, and Rockford. So yes, there's growing concern about what's going to happen in the overnight hours. As you can see, there's a line of storms behind these storms that are now over Peoria. So if we zoom on in, and let me actually put in that high definition radar, there's that line of storms. Looking at what's going to happen with future radar, these storms will eventually come into those areas in the overnight hours. I think particularly what you need to be watching for is that morning commute time. These storms will be producing a lot of lightning, a lot of rain, but also I am concerned that maybe some of these may produce, there may be some embedded rotation within these storms. So that's definitely something to watch out for. But I think if anything were to happen in these zones, again, the tornado watch goes until 10 p.m. and we're going to have to see if they extend any tornado watches. But I think for the most part, what you need to be concerned about if you live in those areas is what's going to happen in the early morning hours and heading into the early morning as well, or the late morning, I should say. So as that line of storms is going to come in through that area, but it'll take some time. And there's no surprise that there's also a risk for severe weather tomorrow. So don't let that catch you off guard. If you're maybe watching us from, let's say, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, you guys are under a enhanced risk of severe weather. Something else too, I know we're focusing a lot on these storms right now, but if you live in this general zone from let's say Kansas to Arkansas, even Texas, your threat, it's going to be primarily in the overnight hours. We're concerned for straight line wind damage, but also tornadoes that could be embedded within this line of storms. So that's something that I want you guys to be aware of heading into the next several hours. I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in about the timing of the storms for later on in the evening, but that's something I want you guys to stay aware. If you happen to find us on YouTube, I'm seeing a lot of questions from Facebook, so I hope you guys have the MyRadar app. This will help you track the storms over the next several hours. It'll also tell you ahead of time when the storms will arrive in your region. So make sure you have the app, have the notifications turned on your phone if you want to know when the storms are going to be heading to your region. So at least for now, that's what I'm expecting. This is not going to be an exact radar, but I want you guys to pay especially attention between that 4 a.m. hour and 8 o'clock a.m. That's when the storms will come into your region for those regions. And after that, some of the areas behind the storm, it is producing blizzard conditions across the northern plains, some pretty cold air. And, you know, this is not abnormal for the month of April. We usually have the clash of the seasons here. This is why we get most of the activity, at least in terms of severe weather, between April and May and even June. And so this is not something that's out of the ordinary, these storms really packing a punch. But what's different with this, at least setup, is we're not seeing as many tornado warnings as we saw on Friday, but every single tornado warning that has been issued has produced a tornado this evening. So that's just something I want to draw your attention to. So let's go back and take a look at what our current, at least standing, are with these tornado warnings. So it looks like so far we only have one tornado warning. This is producing a lot of lightning. This tornado warning goes until, let's see, 8:30. So you have another 8 minutes on this storm. Nothing confirmed, but could be producing quarter-sized hail. A lot of lightning, as you're seeing here on your screen, a lot of lightning coming into that region. So, and if we turn on the per station radar, we can give you a quick glimpse of what's happening there on the ground just from looking at the radar. We have no chaser feeds near this tornado warning. Again, this is our only tornado warning. The reflectivity is looking pretty interesting there. Let's go back to our rotation tracker, velocity. Nothing too impressive. It actually might be, as the latest radar scan loads. Yeah, so I don't think, you know, the National Weather Service office may not extend this tornado warning into areas, but it's coming close to Highway 30 there in Iowa, what we're really growing concern about is this line of severe thunderstorm warnings coming very close to Kansas City now. This severe thunderstorm warning now on the east side of Peoria. And so this is being warned for ping pong sized hail and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And so that's our concern right now. And, you know, I'm seeing a lot of you ask questions, so continue to ask them. I want to answer them. I want to make sure that you are aware of the situation that's going on here. The Storm Prediction Center actually updated their latest outlook. So if we go to that, I kind of want to point out a couple of things here. So earlier in this evening, there was actually a moderate risk. So it looks like maybe the tornado potential is now decreasing over that area, at least in terms of stronger tornadoes, but it's still there. You're still in that enhanced risk. And what we're really concerned about now is more so what's going to happen in the overnight hours from south of Missouri there all the way into Arkansas and even possibly parts of Oklahoma and Texas. So if you live in those areas, just make sure you have at least something to wake you up in the evening hours. If you know you're in a tornado warning, tell your family members, hey, keep your phone on loud in case, you know, you need to call your family members, let them know that maybe there's possibly a tornado warning over that area. And that's really my concern, at least because of the nature of the timing of these storms, especially in the overnight hours, which makes them pretty dangerous. Maybe some of you guys aren't aware that there's storms coming into your region. That's what poses the biggest threat with these storms. But at least so far right now, that one tornado warning that's coming very close to being expired here. And so I think within the next 30 minutes, if you want to ask your questions, make sure to get them in before we log out for the night. But I just want to make sure that you guys are just very aware of the situation right now. Not very much to show you, at least in terms of this chaser feed. Maybe we can take a look at what John Humphreys is. And looks like he lost his signal there in Illinois. Jordan Hall here, I'm not really sure where. I think he's maybe just watching the lightning at this point over that area, which is, you know, it's a good news coming into the zone. But as of right now, we only have that one tornado warning. It's really coming close, at least within the next 5 minutes, to expiring. So we're going to have to see what, and, you know, this tornado warning and the severe thunderstorm warning extended down the line is just to the north west of Cedar Rapids. So this is also coming into a populated zone in Iowa. And so let's take a look at what we're seeing. You know, and I've been glued to social media pretty much all night because there's a lot of footage and a lot of images of those tornadoes in Iowa this evening, even the structure, the supercell structure that, you know, we were seeing there. And so, you know, usually around this time of year, just because of, you know, how flat that region of the country is, and, you know, there's not a lot of tree coverage, it's very easy to see these storms, which is really good for you guys who live in Iowa and Illinois, because if there's something on the ground, you will know instantly about what's happening there. But let me take a look at some of these latest updates here. And, you know, continue to ask your questions at least for the next 30 minutes. Okay, so someone asking about Ottawa, Illinois, and I hope I'm saying that right. And I gotta, you know, I don't know where every city is, so let me look it up here. Okay, so that's just on the, it's on the river. Okay, so you're getting kind of in that zone with, in between Chicago and Peoria. So you're way up here. So at least as of right now, you don't have any storms, but, you know, you guys, so if, let me switch this, and Damien, keep the app on. I want to show this really quickly because I think this is important too. See if I can pull up some of these, because if you're in that region, I will say at least heading into tomorrow, you are under a risk. And I think tomorrow morning is really the time to pay attention if you live in that part of Illinois. So let me do this really quickly. Let's try to edit this because I really want to show this. I don't want you guys to essentially be surprised, because not only do we have severe weather today, parts of the Midwest also have severe weather tomorrow, and some of you guys are going to get in on this action in the morning. And so I don't want this to catch you off guard. And so let me pull this up here. And Damien, hold off for a second. Keep the app up there. I'm just kind of live editing this so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And so the Storm Prediction Center issues these outlooks. And so, you know, they've been doing a phenomenal job. They pretty much do a phenomenal job every year, but, you know, they've been nailing these forecasts, at least in terms of severe weather. They nailed Friday's forecast, today's, and, you know, tomorrow will be another day that we're really concerned for severe weather. We have a enhanced risk of severe weather for parts of the Midwest. And so what that means is, you know, the potential of hail and even tornadoes is possible. So, Damien, if you want to pull that up there, and there you have it. So this is tomorrow, Thursday, April 5th. This is enhanced risk. So some of you guys asking about areas just within this enhanced risk. So what this essentially means is you have, you know, the risk of tornadoes that's there. I think primarily in Michigan to that eastern region of Illinois and parts of Indiana, primarily for tomorrow morning. And then eventually by the afternoon, reaching places like Ohio. And, you know, the Storm Prediction Center really highlighting that we may see damaging winds and a few tornadoes across the Ohio Valley. And so that's really our growing concern for tomorrow. Some of you guys asking about these specific areas. And so this is, again, for tomorrow, Thursday, an enhanced risk of severe weather. And so, you know, stay prepared. A lot of you guys, you know, are watching us from that area. So really appreciate you guys tuning in tonight.
And Erica, one thing I think that's worth mentioning for tomorrow is that, you know, the setup, the ingredients are definitely there. We have the cake, we have the juice, we have the spin, the shear. But one thing that I think is rather fascinating is that the boundary, the north to the kind of the northeast to southwest cold front, is parallel to the direction of the mid-level winds. And what that means to me is that it'll be difficult to push storms off the boundary and get them to remain as isolated, discrete supercells. I think what's more likely is that tomorrow we kind of see what's going on today along the cold front, where because the storms don't want to move off the boundary, because they're kind of being steered along the boundary, one storm will form along the boundary, another will, another will, another will, and they kind of all merge together into one big long line of storms. So tomorrow, ultimately, all the ingredients are there for a high-end series of storms that could produce tornadoes, perhaps strong, but it all comes down to storm mode. If we can get a lone, isolated supercell to work off that boundary, it could be tornadic. But if everything kind of merges and gets all messy along the boundary, damaging straight line winds, couple isolated spin-ups.
Yeah, and so, you know, I just wanted to draw the attention to you guys because, you know, tonight we're covering what's happening now, but also tomorrow. And, you know, meteorologist Matthew Capucci, he's talking about it now, but he also gave a great forecast video about it earlier. And of course, he's going to provide more updates tomorrow. If anything is to change with the forecast, you'll know with that video. So we're trying to stay on top of this severe weather. You know, it's been days of pretty much weeks of severe weather, especially over this region. You guys have just been under the threat of severe weather over the last several weeks. So I get why you guys down there in Illinois and Iowa are concerned for these risks, especially heading into the end of the week. I know it's Easter weekend for some of you guys, so I know maybe some of you guys are traveling heading into tomorrow. So that's something to also keep in mind. You may have some travel issues over those regions, especially if these storms come into your region, produce a lot of lightning. Just stay aware of that. Being a holiday weekend here soon, that's something definitely keep in mind. But again, like I said, meteorologist Matthew Capucci will have an update video tomorrow about what's going to go on in the Midwest there. And, even stretching into portions of Tennessee, you guys were under the threat of severe weather last week as well. So pay attention to areas of, especially in the Midwest, but I don't also want to knock off areas like Tennessee, who are also under this enhanced risk, Kentucky, Missouri, Arkansas. You guys just stay aware.
Yeah, and one thing I'm encouraged by right now, we have no active tornado warnings. Current time is 8:33 Central Time, 9:33 Eastern Time. There are no tornado warnings. However, out of an abundance of caution and abundance of a lot of other things, we are staying with you tonight to make sure that we're going to watch this threat throughout the night. Again, we have a number of severe thunderstorm warnings right now forming along the actual cold front dry line combination from north central Kansas down towards Topeka, a little to the west of Kansas City, and eventually in the direction of Wichita, too. This line is kind of building in. We take MyRadar right now on the Mac Mini, and you'll be able to see from the Kansas City radar, some of these, they look like basic severe thunderstorms with the 60+ mile per hour winds. One thing I want to note, though, if we switch it over to velocity mode, as these things move east at about 50 miles per hour, switch over to velocity, you can just barely see a couple couplets of spin. Here's a red against green couplet. Here's another one. Here's another one. So this is kind of a squall line with the embedded kinks of rotation, a QLCS, if you will, quasi-linear convective system. And so I think that ultimately, yes, this is becoming more kind of a straight line wind risk, but we cannot rule out the potential for one or two sort of spin-ups, if you will, little areas of spin within the line that sort of quickly gel together, become problematic, produce a quick-hitting tornado, and eventually dissipate. Those are very difficult to warn in advance, given how quickly they spin up. Oftentimes, you might have 5 or 6 different couplets, like here, for example. We have 1, 2, 3 different areas of spin. If we're trying to get going down here, remember, right against green, winds in 2 different directions over a short distance. But ultimately, some may gel and produce a tornado, others will not. But it's almost impossible to figure out what the deal will be in terms of which will do it and which won't. So that's why, you want to make sure that you're watching this very closely throughout the night. You have a way to be notified, if at all possible. But ultimately, as these storms move east, the main concern is those straight line winds to about 60 miles per hour and maybe 1 or 2 little kinks of rotation somewhere in there. So, one thing I'm watching right now is a little bit west of Rock Creek, pushing towards Oskaloosa in Kansas, eventually heading in the direction of Kansas City International Airport. There's some weak rotation within the storm. Again, we kind of see these curved, scalloped, sort of backwards or actually forward C shapes. This whole thing, in addition to being a QLCS, a squall line with kinks of spin, is what we call a line echo wave pattern. Basically, of this overarching front, this whole big band of storms, a couple areas kind of surge out ahead of the main line, and you get those little areas of spin on the northern side of these. So here's one, here's one, here's one. They're all sort of, behaving right now, if you will. But that's not to say they couldn't pulse up quickly later on and become tornadic. So I wouldn't be surprised if this one near Rock Creek ultimately gets a warning. We see a severe thunderstorm warning in effect right now, but here's the thing, things can change on a dime on nights like today. The atmosphere is prime. That's why we're staying with you for at least another 30 minutes and probably a lot longer than that, just to make sure that you have everything you need to know in terms of information to get through the night and to get through it safely. Look how quickly, in just the past couple of minutes, this line has filled in even more. Now we have basically continuous severe thunderstorm warnings from Des Moines all the way down towards the same area of roughly the same latitude, really, as Wichita and the Salina, Kansas. So basically, from Interstate 80 all the way down to Interstate 70, virtually continuous severe thunderstorm warning. So it's an active night. There's a lot to track, and otherwise, we'll see what's going on with this one lone discrete cell that eventually could close in on Chicago. This one, the one near Peoria, has virtually fully dissipated. It's not severe anymore, not producing a tornado. But let's take a look and see what is going on with this cell that eventually may head towards Chicago. It is a meaty cell. It is not tornadic right now, just a severe thunderstorm warning for LaSalle, but it is producing wind and hail. Typical 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. But who knows? Could get a little worse. We'll have to see. I don't think the threat is there in Chicago for a big tornado event or anything like that. But again, we just have a couple of these sort of rogue thunderstorms that could be problematic. But farther down south, we'll take a look at these storms again, closing in on the Kansas City metro area. We're taking a look at the ultra-high resolution radar from MCI, Kansas City International Airport, which I think just got like $1 billion makeover. I like the airport to begin with. It was one of the only ones in the country that used the old ticker boards, the flipping the letters and stuff. but it was like one of those old Walmarts. But they got a big facelift, and they also have a nice radar. So let's take a look at the radar if and when it loads, which it should in just a moment. Remember, a lot of people are using the MyRadar app right now, understandably so, getting great information from us and also getting great information from the radar. And of course, this one I imagine would be rather popular. The airport radars are more sensitive than their National Weather Service counterparts, for which reason we can't see quite as far, but for that which we can see, of course, here, we see a lot more temporal and spatial resolution, so a lot of fine details. And if we switch on over to velocity mode, which hopefully will load, I'll zoom out and zoom back in, we can see that there are no tight couplets, but there are some areas that kind of red against green that are a little bit close near, for example, St. Joseph. And here's the thing, ahead of the front, we're seeing winds out of the south. So red is pushing away from the radar. So literally, this whole area right here, just winds go north, out of the south to the north. It's warm and moist. On the backside, winds come down from the north. It's a cool wind direction. So green is towards the radar. So they're kind of coming down like this. And where these two air masses chafe against each other, we are seeing little kinks of spin up. None of them have produced tornado warnings yet, but some could yield them later on. But it's something we definitely have to watch. So again, we are watching this whole line come in. We'll switch on over to our reflectivity once again. Actually, let's take a look at the big picture by turning on our high definition radar, which essentially takes information from the 168 different National Weather Service Doppler radars across the country and the territories and merges them all together, interpolates the data, kind of fills in the gaps with some smart information. And let's see, we'll kind of zoom out. Here, obviously, the front doesn't take meteorologists to see there's a line of storms there. A couple little discrete cells ahead of the main line. Those were the concerns today. Just one or two cells that would pop ahead of the main line, but could become problematic. We're not seeing anything, not a darned thing along the cap down here, or not a darn thing with the cap breaking. I think if it does, it'll be late in the overnight, like past midnight, if not like the 1, 2, 3 o'clock hours early tomorrow morning. Here's something kind of cool. The National Weather Service is so confident in this line filling in farther south as it is doing, they've extended the severe thunderstorm warning down Interstate 35, northeast of El Dorado, Kansas, east of Wichita. And so right here, you might not even be seeing rain yet, no clouds. And I guarantee you in just a few short moments, this whole area will erupt as thunderstorms build right there, because the dry line and the cold front are kind of meeting. The cold front is essentially overtaking the dry line. Two boundaries, they clash, air goes upwards, you get storms developing very quickly, as is the case right there. So severe thunderstorm warnings in effect for everybody in the orange. Ultimately, we're just kind of sitting and watching and waiting to see what's going to happen with this threat overnight tonight. Hopefully things will wind down, but again, we can't rule out the potential for additional rotating storms, especially over parts of the Arctic, where there still is a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk of severe weather. The National Weather Service notes that storms could still develop far after dark. It's only 8:40 p.m. Central Time. The episode is not over yet. In fact, let's see, I'm reading the latest bulletin right now. I think the bigger concern will be embedded tornadoes within that line. But they say, quote, given the breadth of warm sector and relatively broad ascent, so in other words, given all the warm, moist air ahead of the cold front and the kind of broad, diffuse area of upward motion, folks, the forecasters don't necessarily know where storms will form, but they do know that at least some storms could become supercells with a strong tornado risk and a concern for not nighttime tornadoes over Arkansas, Missouri. They write, quote, there remains a serious concern for nocturnal tornadoes over Arkansas and Missouri. And I can see that. So again, there is nothing going on right now over Oklahoma, nothing really over anywhere ahead of the main line, other than this. These just kind of cropped up the past few scans, and these are interesting. They're hooking a little bit. They are kind of curving a little bit. And these are the things that kind of go up. They might not do much for a little while, and then all of a sudden they really grow tall enough to feel those jet stream winds, and they start misbehaving big time.
Yeah, Matt. So somebody's actually asking a question about Texarkana. So I see why, because that storm that's moving over that region has a lot of lightning. And really, that was the last question we received for this evening about what's going to happen for Texarkana. I think they were mostly concerned about this storm that's happening right now, but it's not warned, but it is producing a lot of lightning. So you definitely don't want to be outside if you live in this region. And of course, our growing concern is mostly for the overnight hours, for the potential of some stronger storms. But Matt, I think since right now we don't have any tornado warnings and this tornado watch will expire here within the next hour or so, I think we can end the stream. But again, if you guys have any questions, I'm not seeing any new questions coming into the chat. We're on social media. You can send us a DM, either MyRadar or personal Twitters, even on social media, Facebook, Instagram. We're all on there. Make sure to ask your questions on there. Of course, we're going to be tracking the storm heading into tomorrow. Tomorrow is also another day where we could potentially see some of these stronger storms, especially over the Midwest. And we'll keep you guys safe. But I think with that, we'll call it a night here, Matthew. I know one thing I want to leave you guys with is somebody was asking, they want to see the dog. So if we can show them that before we end the stream, I think it'd be great.
Of course. So believe it or not, it is not my dog. I have to preface, it is actually the competition's dog. He is out of town, and unfortunately the competition is rather friendly. We all try to help out each other when we can. But I'm sure you guys noticed earlier on, let me pivot the camera real quick. I'm sure everybody noticed earlier on when I was trying to do the weather while simultaneously taking care of the dog. Of course, and I went so far, I try to be like a good dog uncle. I went so far as to get the dog a waffle toy. So yes, everything he needs. In any case, we appreciate everyone who was tuned in. Isn't that cute? I got that on Amazon.
I love him. He's so adorable.
It is amazing what Amazon.com sells. They sell everything. I got a cloud chew toy. I got a waffle chew toy. I think I'm getting too attached because I had to write a Washington Post article this morning, and the dog fell asleep on my laptop and blocked the letter Q. So rather than wake the dog, I wrote the whole article without the letter Q.
You are a dog uncle now. We love to see it.
Instead of storms will move quickly, I wrote storms will move swiftly. Instead of the Quad Cities, Iowa, I literally wrote out the 4 different cities that make Quad Cities. And so somehow I wrote like 1,000 words without the letter Q, which can be done. And nobody noticed, but in any case, we appreciate everyone who's tuning into the stream tonight.
Yes. And for those of you in the plains, I'm getting one final question here about what's going to happen in Kansas. We were talking about that earlier. We're expecting a line of storms here within the next several hours. Just stay on alert. Potential of gusty winds, maybe even some rotation within these storms. So just be aware of that. Have those alerts turn on in the overnight. And of course, Matthew, thank you for showing us your dog, that you're dog sitting. But with that, we'll leave you with that tonight. Stay safe, guys. And thank you so much for tuning into our stream. Of course, follow us all across the social media platforms and send us your questions on there, and we'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. But good night, guys. Stay safe.